Instead, he walked faster and faster. The smile on his face grew wider and wider. Han Yunqi had no choice but to run. Thus, the two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly passed through the valley. Duanmu Yao lay weakly on a tall tree in the valley, blood still dripping from her lips. Long Fei Yi had used just the right amount of strength to heavily injure her so that she couldn't move, but it didn't take her life. She was clearly as beautiful as a celestial fairy, but her phoenix eyes were as malicious as a witch's. Coldly, she watched the two figures disappear into the distance. Han Yunqi, you're really shameless. You actually dared to hug my senior brother. Duanmu Yao's maidservants were also in disbelief. The Duke of Qin, who was obsessed with cleanliness, actually allowed a woman to get close to him and even hug him so tightly? Could it be that they were mistaken? Slut, I'll definitely kill you. The more Duanmu Yao thought about it, the angrier she became. After all, she left the palace this time precisely because of Han Yunqi. She advised in a low voice, Princess, recuperating is more important. I won't. Let's see what he'll do if I die. How will he explain this to Master? Duanmu Yao raged. Her anger aggravated her internal injuries, causing her to spit up a mouthful of blood. Princess, you know as well that the Duke of Qin hates being threatened. Why must you? Before the maidservant could finish, Duanmu Yao cut her off harshly. Do I count as someone else in his eyes? He'd rather hurt me than save that woman's life? Since when has Han Yunqi been more important than this princess in his heart? Princess, Han Yunqi is still Qin Wangfei, appointed by the Empress Dowager. The Duke of Qin probably had no choice. The maidservant coaxed again. Duanmu Yao laughed coldly. As long as he's unwilling, there's nothing in this world that can't be forced. Han Yunqi had married into the Duke of Qin's estate on the Emperor's orders. But why did he leave that woman there? She'd been waiting in silence for him to get rid of Han Yunqi since the wedding, but he didn't make a move. Instead, he kept her by his side. They'd been martial brothers and junior sister for so many years, but when had he ever taken her out on a business trip? Just what part of that useless, cowardly woman caught his eye? The more she thought, the angrier she grew. Qiu let's go to Tianning's capital city. I want to stay at the Duke of Qin's estate to recuperate. Princess, His Highness Crown Prince is still in Medicine Ghost Valley, asking for medicine for esteemed Empress. You should at least make a trip there, the maidservant reminded her urgently. Duanmu Yao finally remembered and could only nod her head. It won't be too late to go to the capital after asking for the medicine, she mused. By now, Han Yunqi was in Long Fei Ye's arms again as they flew through the air, weaving through the trees. Although she'd given Long Fei Ye a cold look, she was once again curious about the white-robed woman. Still, she couldn't guess her intentions. As expected, curiosity killed the cat. After a long struggle, Han Yunqi couldn't help but ask, Hey, who was that white-robed woman just then? Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi pretended not to hear her question. He stared straight ahead with an expressionless face. Han Yunqi rolled her eyes as she lost all interest in the matter. After a day's rush, they arrived at Medicine Ghost Valley early the next morning. As soon as they entered the valley, Han Yunqi caught a whiff of the various fragrances of medicinal plants. Heaven knows how many medicinal ingredients were planted here, but it was truly a miraculous place. Soon, they arrived at the real entrance. They saw a gate made of vines and two medicine boys guarding it. There were two groups of people in front of the gate. One group was lining up, and the other group was all kneeling. It looked like the people in line were here to buy medicine, while the kneeling ones were here to beg for it. Han Yunqi and the others watched for a while, only to see the people in line chatting with an old steward for a while. They were all dejected and joined the kneeling line. It looked like they couldn't buy any medicinal ingredients. Suddenly, the kneeling person rushed over and shouted, Master Pill Fiend, I'm willing to pay 10 million taels of gold for a stalk of dragon beard grass. Please do me a favor. I'm waiting for the medicine to save my life. The old steward immediately walked over and angrily rebuked, What are you shouting for? Is this a place where you can show off your wealth? Come, kick him out. Steward Ming, how could this lowly one dare to show off his wealth? This lowly one has exhausted all of his family's property to beg for the medicine. "Steward Ming, please do me a favor and inform your master." That person hurriedly begged on his knees. However, Steward Ming was unreasonable and waved his hand, ordering people to kick him out. Han Yunqi frowned as she watched. She knew how precious the dragon beard grass was, but it wasn't worth 10 million taels of gold. Moreover, he had already lost his family's fortune. Seeing that person in tears and despair, Han Yunqi felt very uncomfortable. She really wanted to give him a stalk of dragon beard grass. She just happened to have a few stalks in her detoxification system. Unfortunately, looking at the hundreds of people in front of her, she gave up. She could help one person, but not all of them. If she only helped one person in front of all the people in need, she wouldn't be seen as a good person. She would only be seen as a heartless villain like the Medicine Ghost Valley. Moreover, they were here to ask for medicine, not to cause trouble. At this time, Steward Ming saw them and came over, gesturing. Hey, you two. I'm talking about you two. What are you standing there for? Don't you know the rules? Why aren't you lining up? Long Fei Yi looked over and ordered coldly, You, come here. Steward Ming was stunned. Then his face was filled with disbelief. What did you say? I told you to come here. Don't you understand human language? Long Fei Yi retorted. Steward Ming was immediately enraged and rushed over. He could tell at a glance that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi had extraordinary auras. They were either rich or respectable. However, there were many influential people who came to the Medicine Ghost Valley to ask for medicine. He had seen even more respectable people, but he had never seen anyone so arrogant. He looked at Long Fei Yi with disdain. Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like that? You want medicine? Haha, don't even think about it. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. He said coldly, Go tell Guqi Sha that Long Fei Yi has brought a poisonous python pill. Ask him if he wants to trade. Steward Ming was almost choked to death. As soon as he heard the words Long Fei Yi, his eyes widened. When he heard the words poisonous python pill, he nodded furiously. Only then did Long Fei Yi release him. The old steward didn't even report his arrival, but said respectfully, I didn't know it was Your Highness Duke of Qin. If I've offended you, please forgive me. Your Highness Duke of Qin, please wait a moment. This one will immediately go report. Han Yunqi was startled on the side. Only now did she realize that the words Long Fei Yi were useful not only in Tianning's capital city, but outside as well. There had to be a reason why Tianning's emperor feared Long Fei Yi. Soon enough, the old steward scrambled out of the courtyard like a lackey. Your Highness Duke of Qin, His Excellency Pill Fiend invites you in. Please follow this one. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi climbed into the carriage as soon as they passed through the Rattan gates. As they sped along, Han Yunqi discovered that all the plants within the gates were actually medicinal ingredients. Moreover, the deeper they went, the more precious the plants became. Good heavens, Guqi Sha might not have any medical ethics, but he's definitely a rare talent. Soon enough, the carriage stopped in front of an elegant courtyard by a stream. Steward Ming didn't follow them inside, but announced, His Highness Duke of Qin has arrived. Very soon, a strange, slow voice drifted out of the room. It was so strange that it didn't seem to come from a human. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you've brought a poisonous python pill on your first visit. What should this excellency give you in exchange? The life-blood pill, Long Fei Yi replied. Silence fell upon the room at his words. After a long time, the strange, androgynous voice spoke again. You too come in. Han Yunqi felt goosebumps all over her body when she heard the strange voice. She followed Long Fei Yi into the room. When she saw the person inside, Han Yunqi felt another layer of goosebumps all over her body. Sitting in the main seat was a tall man dressed in black. His black robes covered his entire body, and even his head was covered by a large black hood. From afar, he looked like a faceless person. This was the ghost genius, Guqi Sha. Han Yunqi originally thought that he was an old man, but now she couldn't even guess his age. Even his gender was a blur. Han Yunqi was curious, but Long Fei Yi wasn't. He asked Long Fei Yi coldly, Guqi Sha, do you want to make the exchange? AI. Guqi Sha let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, someone brought the 7 stars caterpillar grass and also wants to exchange it for the lifeblood pill. These are two things that this excellency has been dreaming of for a long time. How do you expect this excellency to choose? Chapter 60. What? Someone actually brought 7 stars caterpillar grass to trade for the lifeblood pill? And he even came earlier than us. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi looked at each other in surprise. They thought that victory was already in their grasp, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? Fortunately, Gu Qi Shai hadn't given away the lifeblood pill yet. Otherwise, their trip would have been in vain. What does your excellency pill fiend plan to do? Long Fei Yi asked. Aya, Duke of Qin, what do you think we should do? Gu Qi Shai's sigh was very soft, but it was hair-raising for no reason. It was as if his voice was right next to their ears. It's very simple. Just trade with this prince, Long Fei Yi said as he immediately flashed the poisonous python pill, completely ignoring the 7 stars caterpillar grass. At that moment, a cold light flashed across the faceless pill fiend's face, revealing a pair of bewitching eyes. They stared fixedly at the prey in Long Fei Yi's hands. A fox. That was Han Yunxi's first thought. Those were clearly a pair of bewitching eyes. Isn't this pill fiend very old? How can he have such bewitching eyes? At that moment, an arrogant laugh came from the side. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you still haven't asked whether this crown prince agrees or not? Following the voice, they saw an extraordinarily domineering man. His facial features were deep and imposing, and his figure was tall and powerful. He was dressed in a luxurious black robe with golden edges, which accentuated his nobility and mystery. He walked over unhurriedly, his cold and arrogant gaze sweeping past Long Fei Yi before impudently sizing up Han Yunxi. He seemed to know her identity, and although there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, it quickly disappeared. Han Yunxi hated this kind of arrogant and impolite sizing up the most. Cold as she looked at him, she knew that he was a crown prince, but she didn't know which country he was from. Does Crown Prince Yi not agree? Long Fei Yi asked. Based on Long Fei Yi's cold tone, the words Crown Prince Yi seemed to be deliberately said for Han Yunxi to know who this man was. So it was him. Han Yunxi had heard of this name before. This was the Crown Prince of Western Zhou, Duamu Bay. People called him Crown Prince Yi. Unlike Tianning's Crown Prince, Western Zhou's Crown Prince Yi was famous throughout Cloud Realm continent for his arrogant, high-profile, sinister, and cruel ways. Before he even ascended to the throne, he'd already eradicated all dissidents in court. Western Zhou country was located on the west side of Tianning country. It was Tianning country's ally by marriage. Logically speaking, Duamu Bay and Long Fei Yi should be on good terms, but judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to be on good terms. Duamu Bay was 1.8 meters tall and was about the same height as Long Fei Yi. He walked closer to Long Fei Yi and gently pressed on Long Fei Yi's shoulder. He deliberately slowed down his tone and said word by word, "No. Answer." But as soon as he finished speaking, Long Fei Yi's shoulder exploded with a powerful force that viciously shook Duanmu Bei's hand away. At the same time, Duanmu Bei lost his footing and backed up 2 steps. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Long Fei Yi, do you know what first come, first serve means?" "Your lordship doesn't." Long Fei Yi's tone was even more arrogant and haughty than his own. So speaking, he rushed in front of Duanmu Bei and wanted to snatch the 7 stars caterpillar grass from his hands. Seeing this, Han Yunxi gave a start before she grew amused. Long Fei Yi was so barbaric and domineering. She liked it. Let's see what Duamu Bei will use to exchange with his excellency Pill Fiend after he gets the 7 stars caterpillar grass. Just then, Duamu Bei's shoulder was enough to prove that he wasn't Long Fei Yi's match. He immediately retreated, dodging as he shouted, "Long Fei Yi, you're petty and lowly." The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. Only the winner had the right to determine whether someone was despicable or noble. Long Fei Yi didn't stop. Instead, each move was more vicious than the last. His speed was so fast that Duamu Bei didn't have time to talk nonsense. Han Yunxi watched from the side with fear. Time and time again, she saw Long Fei Yi about to snatch the item, but unfortunately, he was always dodged. Pill Fiend sat high above, lazily leaning on the main seat. His long and narrow eyes were slightly narrowed as he watched with relish. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi grabbed Duanmu Bei's wrist with one hand and grabbed the brocade box in his hand with the other. But who knew that at this critical moment, Pill Fiend would suddenly shout, "Stop!" His voice was deliberately drawn out in an indolent manner. Long Fei Yi was distracted, and Duanmu Bei dodged. He then said sternly, "Pill Fiend, when did your Medicine Ghost Valley allow outsiders to casually fight?" Medicine Ghost Valley had Medicine Ghost Valley's rules. Outsiders were not allowed to casually fight. Haha, I only wanted to see your martial arts. Crown Prince Yi, you've disappointed me a little. His Excellency Pill Fiend sighed. You. Duanmu Bei angrily wanted to step forward, but who would have thought that Lord Pill Fiend would slowly stretch out a bony hand from his black robe? It was like the hand of a 1,000-year-old demon, playing with several dazzling butterfly darts in his hand. Without a doubt, this was a warning. Duanmu Bei could only suppress his anger. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with displeasure. He withdrew his hand and asked cold, "Pill Fiend, who do you want to trade with?" "Pill Fiend, there's more than one poisonous python in the world, but there's only one 7 stars caterpillar grass. It's like a grass and a worm, but it's neither grass nor worm. You must think carefully. Also, this prince arrived first." Duanmu Bei immediately reminded him, "There are many poisonous pythons, but there's only one 500-year-old poisonous python." Long Fei Yi also reminded him. "Ayaya." Pill Fiend lightly sighed again. His voice was faint, as if it came from the depths of hell. Han Yunqi couldn't help but shiver again. She observed Pill Fiend's hand. No matter how she looked at it, it didn't match with his foxy and narrow eyes. Long Fei and Duanmu Bei didn't say a word as they allowed Pill Fiend to sigh. Han Yunqi watched from the side, unable to guess whose item His Excellency Pill Fiend would choose. Unexpectedly, His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed strangely. "Hee hee, I want both of them. How about you two continue to fight?" As he spoke, he even cautiously told Long Fei Yi, "Qin Wang, this lord allows you to rob, but the item you snatch will belong to this lord. How about it?" Han Yunqi almost spat out when she heard this. This rotten old man with no integrity was too greedy and too treacherous. However, she liked it. In any case, it was just making Long Fei Yi put in a bit more effort. They wouldn't lose out. Duanmu Bei's face instantly paled. He clenched his fists and angrily said, "Gu Qi Sha, do you want to break the rules of Medicine Ghost Valley?" Pill Fiend looked as if he suddenly realized something. "I can't break the rules. How about you two fight outside the valley?" Duanmu Bei almost vomited blood when he heard this. Long Fei Yi shrugged. "That's fine too." Unexpectedly, at this moment, a clear voice rang out. "Big brother, are you inside?" "Big brother? Which family's little sister is looking for her big brother?" Han Yunqi was puzzled. She saw the white-clothed girl walk in with light steps. She was born with an otherworldly beauty, like a fairy who didn't eat the food of mortals. Her small dimples at the corners of her mouth didn't lose the liveliness of a young girl. The beauty of a fairy and the spirit of a fairy were perfectly displayed on her body. Han Yunqi immediately knew who she was. She was Duanmu Bei's younger sister, Western Zhou's Princess Changle, who was adored by everyone, Duanmu Yao. It was said that after this princess came of age, the number of nobles from various countries who came to the Western Zhou imperial palace to ask for her hand in marriage increased with each passing year. However, this princess had high standards and hadn't even looked at a single one of them. Han Yunqi remembered that she had never seen this princess before. However, why did her figure seem so familiar? As soon as Duanmu Yao entered and saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, she stared blankly. She didn't expect that her senior brother would also come here. Moreover, he had even brought Han Yunqi. A trace of jealousy flashed through Duanmu Yao's eyes. She pretended that the previous unpleasantness with Long Fei Yi had not occurred. Striding forward, she deliberately bumped into Han Yunqi and snatched the position beside Long Fei Yi. Pleasantly surprised, she asked, "Senior brother, why are you here?" At this moment, Han Yunqi knew that the white-clothed girl who had courted death in the Snake Valley was her. So she was Long Fei Ye's junior sister. Could it be that she had been quarreling with her senior brother when she had fallen into the poisonous gas of the python in the Snake Valley? It seemed that her little junior sister's jealousy was very great. When Duamu Yao arrived, Duamu Bei's eyes flashed with calculation. He smiled and said, "Yao Yao, your senior brother wants to fight with us for the lifeblood pill? Why don't you fight with him?" Duamu Yao was shocked. Frowning, she asked, "Senior brother, is this true? What do you want the lifeblood pill for?" A trace of impatience flashed through Long Fei Ye's eyes. Just as he was about to speak, Han Yunqi beat him to it. She stood beside Long Fei Yi and looked at Duanmu Yao with raised brows. She earnestly said, "Your Highness, this concubine must have the lifeblood pill." Duanmu Yao was shocked once again. How could this be? Senior brother was actually fighting for a woman? And he was even fighting with her? No, she absolutely wouldn't allow it. Moreover, she couldn't stand Han Yunqi calling herself this concubine in front of her senior brother. "Senior brother, the lifeblood pill is mine. It wasn't easy for me to find the 7 stars caterpillar grass to exchange for it. You're not allowed to fight with me." Duanmu Yao's commanding tone was overbearing and spoiled. However, Long Fei Yi only pretended not to hear and ignored both Han Yunqi and Duanmu Yao. He coldly looked at Duanmu Bei. "Crown Prince Yi, since Lord Pill Fiend has such intentions, why don't you two go out and fight?" If it was before, perhaps Duanmu Bei would have agreed. However, after exchanging a few blows, Duanmu Bei clearly knew that he wouldn't be able to gain the upper hand. A trace of insidiousness flashed through his eyes. Duanmu Bei smiled. "Since Yao Yao is here, you two should have a good spar. In my opinion, it's just a spar. There's no need to leave the valley." As he spoke, he looked at Lord Pill Fiend. "Lord Pill Fiend, what do you think?" Lord Pill Fiend chuckled strangely. "A spar between senior brother and junior sister, hee. This lord likes it very much." Hearing this, Duanmu Bei immediately handed the 7 stars caterpillar grass to Duanmu Yao and informed her of Lord Pill Fiend's conditions. Duanmu Yao was shocked and immediately grasped the 7 stars caterpillar grass tightly. "Lord Pill Fiend," Long Fei Yi was about to retort. However, Lord Pill Fiend laughed heartily. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, this lord is very much looking forward to it." As he spoke, he ordered the servants to serve tea, deciding to properly enjoy a good show. Long Fei narrowed his eyes dangerously at the sight of such a shameless thing. Han Yunqi silently cursed him in her heart. Let's have Duanmu Yao come out instead. It was impossible to explain things clearly between martial brother and junior sister. Forget about the results. Even the process of a duel between martial brother and junior sister was hard to predict. Duanmu Yao looked like she was going to risk her life to protect the 7 stars caterpillar grass. Would Long Fei Yi let Duanmu Yao do it? Although his attitude towards Duanmu Yao had been very cold, his performance in the Snake Valley had been very positive. His anxiousness was clearly because he was afraid that Duanmu Yao would be hurt, so much so that he had even left her to die at the side. Han Yunqi thought of this and silently shed a tear in her heart. Thus, she threw caution to the wind. In any case, she was only responsible for saving people. Whether or not she could obtain the lifeblood pill wasn't within the scope of her responsibility. Chapter 61. With this thought, Han Yunqi felt much more at ease. She quietly retreated to the side and sat down, ready to watch the show. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, Qinxia looks forward to your performance." Since Pill Fiend had spoken, Duanmu Bei's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, it's just a spar. Don't take it too seriously." After he finished speaking, he retreated to the side. The room fell silent. Everyone's gaze fell on Long Fei Yi, nervous and expectant. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Ye's first reaction caught everyone off guard. His icy gaze fell on Duanmu Yao's hand, his expression grim and determined. His figure suddenly flashed and closed in on Duanmu Yao. This guy really wanted to steal. Han Yunqi jumped in fright, but she quickly recovered. She really wanted to cheer for Long Fei Yi. Although she knew that Long Fei Yi was only doing this to obtain the lifeblood pill, she was still very happy. Senior brother, junior sister, whatever, they could go to hell. She decided to forgive this guy for his actions in Snake Valley. The most surprised were the siblings, Duanmu Bei and Duanmu Yao. Duanmu Yao instantly retreated, her eyes turning red. Although senior brother always ignored her, that was because of senior brother's cold temperament. After so many years, senior brother had never snatched anything from her. Today, he actually stole something from her for Han Yunqi. He wanted to steal something from her and give it to Han Yunqi. No, Duanmu Yao couldn't accept this reality. She fiercely glared at Han Yunqi, wishing she could rush over and tear that woman apart right now. Duanmu Bei angrily said, Long Feiyi, are you trying to steal a woman's things? That thing isn't hers. Long Feiyi retorted domineeringly. Duanmu Bei's despicable behavior left him speechless. Duanmu Yao huffed and looked at Long Feiyi in a fit of pique. She simply hid the 7 stars caterpillar grass in her chest, then puffed out her chest and sucked in her stomach. She fearlessly said, Senior brother, this is a rare opportunity. Let's have a good competition. If you want to steal it, then come. Suddenly, the room became silent, and then Old Man Pill Fiend laughed loudly. His voice was sometimes strange, sometimes deep and old, and sometimes bright and cheerful, filling the entire room. Good idea, haha. Han Yunqi's mouth twitched as she watched. Duanmu Yao, you win. Have you no shame? A man's despicableness can never compare to a woman's despicableness. Long Feiyi's face darkened, and a hint of disgust flashed through his eyes. Both sides were in a deadlock. As His Excellency Pill Fiend's laughter gradually stopped, the room fell into silence. Pill Fiend sat loftily in the host's seat, his mood extremely cheerful. It had been a long time since Pill Fiend Valley had been so lively. He swept his gaze over the crowd before resting on Han Yunqi, his long, narrow eyes narrowing playfully. Everyone was standing and in a deadlock. This woman was interesting. She was actually sitting and watching the show like him. Thus, in the silence, His Excellency Pill Fiend opened his mouth, his tone slow and leisurely. Your Highness Duke of Qin, isn't it more appropriate for a woman to steal from a woman? These words were undoubtedly aimed at Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi's eyes widened as she looked at His Excellency Pill Fiend. What was this old thing trying to do? Duanmu Bei and Duanmu Yao both looked at Han Yunqi. Only now did they notice that she was actually sitting leisurely to the side. Seeing Han Yunqi's leisurely attitude, Duanmu Yao became even more furious. What right did she have? Duanmu Yao had already seen Han Yunqi's cowardice and incompetence in Snake Valley. She didn't want to fight with her senior brother, but now His Excellency Pill Fiend had given her a good idea. Her lips curved in ridicule. Duanmu Yao sneered. Han Yunqi, if you want something, then come and steal it yourself. This princess will give you 3 moves. Long Feiyi said indifferently, His Excellency Pill Fiend, she doesn't know martial arts? Doesn't know martial arts? His Excellency Pill Fiend seemed somewhat suspicious. Where did a woman who didn't know martial arts get the confidence to sit here so calmly and leisurely? How could Duanmu Yao know the truth about Long Feiyi wanting the lifeblood pill? Seeing him so protective, her eyes seemed to be dipped in poison. If you don't have the ability, then don't come out and make a fool of yourself. Han Yunqi was satisfied with Long Feiyi's performance. At least he hadn't changed his stance from beginning to end. Seeing Duanmu Yao so arrogant, she wasn't anxious. She slowly stood up and put on a pitiful expression. His Excellency Pill Fiend, it's so rude for a woman to get physical. Besides, I don't know martial arts. How about we compete in something else? Before Pill Fiend could say anything, Duanmu Yao angrily asked, Han Yunqi, what do you mean? Who are you calling rude? Whoever minds, I'm talking about. Han Yunqi said calmly. Duanmu Yao was about to lose her temper when Han Yunqi quickly added, as the Grand Princess of Western Zhou, your name spreads throughout the country. You're perfect in all 3 aspects, literary, martial, and physical. You must have excellent self-cultivation. So how could you be rude? Duanmu Yao was about to explode when she heard those words. No matter how angry she was, she couldn't express it. She could only suppress it in her heart. Duanmu Bei narrowed his eyes. Although he was angry, there was also a trace of admiration in his eyes. This woman who didn't know martial arts was even more formidable than a woman who knew martial arts. Long Fei Ye's lips curved up slightly, but His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed out loud in delight. He loved this show too much. Duanmu Yao couldn't vent her anger. She took a few deep breaths before forcing herself to calm down. Fine, Han Yunqi, this princess agrees. You can compete in anything you want. Han Yunqi was right. She was one of Cloud Realm Continent's famous talented women. She was perfect in all three aspects: literary, martial, and physical. This weak woman's competition was nothing more than child's play in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She'd grown tired of those things since she was young. Han Yunqi was just the first wife's daughter who'd fallen out of favor from a small family. What could she use to compete with her? Han Yunqi knitted her brows in thought. For the sake of fairness, Your Excellency Pill Fiend should decide the competition. Naturally, His Excellency Pill Fiend agreed. No matter who won or lost, he'd still get 2 treasures. Watching women fight was much better than watching men fight. Very good, then it's decided. He laughed strangely again, seeming to be very excited. This Excellency will set the questions, so you two can compete. But he was stuck here. What should they compete in? His Excellency Pill Fiend immediately quieted down. Having gotten used to his strange laughter, Han Yunqi didn't find it so terrifying anymore. But now she suddenly realized that this strange thing was most terrifying when he was quiet. Although she was far away, she could still sense the mysterious and terrifying aura emanating from his body. Heaven knows what kind of terrifying questions he'd set. Duanmu Yao raised her chin and gave Han Yunqi a provocative look. She was determined to win and was extremely arrogant. No matter what the competition was, she had to perform well in front of her senior brother and humiliate this Qin Wangfei in front of him. Although Han Yunqi wasn't confident, anything was better than martial arts. She probably wasn't even as strong as Duanmu Yao. Han Yunqi might lose in person, but she didn't lose in spirit. She arched a brow and looked back provocatively. So what if she was a princess? She could even take care of her own country's princess, to say nothing of a neighboring country's. After a long time, His Excellency Pill Fiend slowly raised his head. This Excellency has thought it through. Everyone immediately looked over. His Excellency Pill Fiend was in a good mood as he laughed strangely. Find medicine. You two can compete to find medicine. Find medicine? Find what medicine? How do we find it? Duanmu Yao was very surprised. This was completely outside of her expectations. This Excellency will provide a prescription and a book of medicinal sketches for you to find in the entire Medicine Ghost Valley. Whoever finds all the ingredients in the prescription first wins. His Excellency Pill Fiend said smugly. He was very satisfied with his idea. A trace of calculation flitted through Duanmu Yao's eyes. She didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients, but what about Han Yunqi? This woman was the Han family's trash. Although rumors about her becoming a genius doctor overnight were flying all over the Ning Imperial City, Duanmu Yao didn't believe it. She felt that it was nothing more than a rumor spread by this woman herself. Otherwise, with so many people coming to seek medical treatment, why didn't she see a single one? Therefore, Han Yunqi should be the same as her. She didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients. If Han Yunqi didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients like her, then wouldn't she have an advantage? After all, the Medicine Ghost Valley was so big. Finding medicinal ingredients all over the valley was a very tiring task. Judging from Han Yunqi's frail body, she definitely wouldn't be able to bear it. Even if her body could bear it, her speed was far slower than hers. Thinking of this, Duanmu Yao immediately said flatteringly, His Excellency Pill Fiend is indeed an expert. Even the questions you come up with are different from ordinary people. However, I don't know if we can let outsiders help us find medicine. Since it's a competition between the two of you, naturally no outsiders can help. His Excellency Pill Fiend seriously replied. Hearing this, Duanmu Yao became even more confident. Without Long Fei Ye's help, how far could Han Yunqi walk with her pair of legs? How fast could she walk? If she flew with her qinggong, she could walk for half a day. His Excellency Pill Fiend, I'm willing to challenge you. Duanmu Yao was very straightforward. Pill Fiend was very satisfied. Looking at Han Yunqi, he asked, Qin Wangfei, what about you? It's a bit difficult. Han Yunqi sighed softly. You can also admit defeat right now. Duanmu Yao immediately taunted. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi earnestly replied, although it's a bit difficult, I'm still from a medical family. Princess Changle, don't you think it's unfair for us to compete in finding medicinal ingredients? Smiling mockingly, Duanmu Yao said in a low voice, it's said that you're the first good-for-nothing in the history of the Han family. How pitiful. There's no harm in this princess letting you win. So you're saying that Princess Changle feels that this competition is very fair? Han Yunqi asked again. Duanmu Bei listened from the side and felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to speak, Duanmu Yao, who had a guilty conscience, was afraid that Han Yunqi would bring up the issue of her physical strength. Impatiently, she said, it's very fair. If you agree, then let's begin immediately. Han Yunqi appeared helpless, nodding her head. Okay. Since there was someone who wanted to court a snub, what could she do? Han Yunqi definitely wouldn't tell Duanmu Yao that when she was studying Chinese medicine, there was a period of time where she was specifically trained to search for medicinal ingredients in the mountains. Medicinal ingredients had different growth habits and grew in different locations. Moreover, some medicinal ingredients grew together, while others absolutely couldn't grow together. As long as she was familiar with the growth habits and patterns of these medicinal ingredients, not to mention a valley, even if she was given an entire mountain, she would still be able to find the medicinal ingredients in a short period of time. To make a living, how could she not have a few tricks up her sleeve? Hearing Han Yunqi agree, Duanmu Yao's lips curled into a snicker. She couldn't wait to see her lose Long Fei Ye's poisonous python pill. Very good. Since you've agreed, then you're not allowed to go back on your word. If you go back on your word, this Darren will be very unhappy. Pilfiend's laughter seemed to be both a joke and a warning. Finished speaking, he lazily got up and walked gracefully towards his desk to write down a prescription. Medicine Ghost Valley had so many medicinal ingredients. What kind of prescription would he write down? Chapter 62. His Excellency Pilfiend's bony hands were basically just skin and bones. The joints of his bones were particularly prominent, and they were black in color, causing others to feel their hair stand on end. However, such a hand was able to grasp the brush in a proper manner, and the words he wrote were vigorous and majestic with an unrestrained attitude. Soon, His Excellency Pilfiend had filled an entire piece of paper with more than 20 medicinal ingredients. Seeing this, Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with a complicated look, and he said unhappily, "How long do you want them to search for the lifeblood pill for emergency use?" His Excellency Pilfiend, we can't afford to waste time waiting for people who need to be saved. Duanmu Bei also spoke up. Cough, cough. His Excellency Pilfiend coughed a few times, unhappy. There weren't many medicinal ingredients, and they only needed to search for a while. Wasn't that fun? They needed to search for at least 10 days to half a month. That way, he could watch Beauty search for medicinal ingredients every day and wouldn't be bored. As for whether they saved lives or not, what did that have to do with him? There were many people waiting outside the valley to be saved. If you think it's too much, then don't play. His Excellency Pilfiend sneered. This time, Duanmu Bei and Duanmu Yao were anxious. Just as they were about to agree, Long Fei said, "All right." After saying that, he actually turned to leave. His Excellency Pilfiend suddenly narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Long Fei Ye's back, emitting a dangerous aura from head to toe. Long Fei could feel a powerful aura pressing against him from behind, but his expression was still cold and arrogant. His footsteps were firm, and he even urged Han Yunqi, still not leaving. Competing to find medicinal ingredients was Han Yunqi's strong point. Long Fei didn't want to refuse, but if there were so many medicinal ingredients, Han Yunqi wouldn't be able to beat Han Yunqi in terms of physical strength. In the end, she would still lose. Long Fei wouldn't let this step pass. Of course, Han Yunqi was well aware of her own strengths and weaknesses. She couldn't help but admire Long Fei's boldness. She followed him without another word. Seeing that the two were really about to leave, the anger in Pilfiend's eyes grew more and more intense. Even Duanmu Yao, who was closest to him, felt inexplicably afraid. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi had already reached the door and were about to leave. Suddenly, a butterfly dart flew out from His Excellency Pill Fiend's hand. Its trajectory couldn't be seen as it approached Long Fei Yi in the blink of an eye. However, Long Fei Yi didn't even turn around. An invisible force shook out from his back and directly shook the butterfly dart back to His Excellency Pill Fiend. Seeing this, Duanmu Yao and Duanmu Bei were shocked. They didn't expect that in just a few months, Long Fei Yi's martial arts had improved so much. His Excellency Pill Fiend had been longing for the poisonous python pill for many years, so how could he let Long Fei Yi really leave? Moreover, the lifeblood pill wasn't unique to Medicine Ghost Valley. Other places should have it as well. With Long Fei Yi's ability, it wasn't impossible for him to find it. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't even look back as he stepped out of the door, His Excellency Pill Fiend finally opened his mouth cold. Long Fei Yi, this Excellency promises you. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi returned. Needless to say, these two really did look like husband and wife. Both of them were calm and composed. His Excellency Pill Fiend looked at them cold. A trace of hatred flashed through his eyes. Long Fei Yi, you win this time. You better never come and beg me for the secret medicine of Medicine Ghost Valley's poison sect. Moreover, this Excellency will take revenge for you right now. Medicine Ghost Valley's Excellency Pill Fiend tore up the first secret prescription and picked up the brush again. The more anxious Long Fei Yi was, the more he wanted to stall for time. He didn't need to write down a lot of medicinal ingredients, just a few. He could make it so that Han Yunqi and Duanmu Yao wouldn't be able to find it for a year and a half. When the time came, he wanted to see if Long Fei Yi or Duanmu Bei would be the first to panic. His Excellency Pill Fiend's brush hovered over the white paper. This time, he didn't write immediately. Instead, he seriously pondered. There were many kinds of medicines that were difficult to find. Some looked like ordinary medicines, but were extremely good at hiding. They were clearly right in front of your eyes, but couldn't be found. Some had very harsh growth conditions and couldn't be found, let alone medicinal ingredients. Some were rare and had a long growth cycle. At most, there were 1 or 2 stalks in the valley. Naturally, His Excellency Pill Fiend had to write down all kinds of medicines that met all kinds of conditions. Everyone was waiting. Duanmu Yao glanced at Han Yunqi several times, her gaze cold and disdainful. Han Yunqi didn't want to play the battle of gazes with her this time. She moved closer to Long Fei Yi's side on purpose. Seeing this, Duanmu Yao was so angry that she immediately turned her head away. She didn't want to look anymore. Long Fei Yi lowered his head and looked disdainfully at Han Yunqi, then took a step back to reject her. Han Yunqi was instantly embarrassed. However, Duanmu Yao didn't see this scene. Han Yunqi felt a little stifled. She thought that if it wasn't Long Fei Yi who wanted the lifeblood pill today, but she wanted it, he would probably be the one to stand by and watch with folded arms. In fact, there was no need to suspect that this guy and Duanmu Yao were martial brothers or sisters. This guy was cold and emotionless to everyone. In his heart, there were no exceptions. Finally, after a long wait, His Excellency Pill Fiend made up his mind. He picked up the brush and wrote down 3 types of medicines on the white paper. He made 2 copies and handed them to Han Yunqi and Duanmu Yao. Han Yunqi didn't even look when Duanmu Yao read them out one by one. 7 Death's Hawktail, Simple White Yimi, Ghost Hits the Wall. Hearing these names, Han Yunqi was instantly dumbstruck. She abruptly looked at the prescription in her hand and read it word by word to make sure there was no mistake. Heavens, it was actually these 3 medicines. Han Yunqi was so excited that she wanted to cry. Thus, in the eyes of outsiders, she looked like she wanted to cry but had no tears. Seeing her like this, Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with a complicated look. He couldn't figure out this woman. However, Duanmu Yao laughed. Qin Wang Fei, you come from a medical family. You've seen these 3 medicines before, right? Han Yunqi took a deep breath before shaking her head. I've never seen him before. Duanmu Yao was instantly filled with confidence. Very good. This was the time to compete in physical strength. Very quickly, His Excellency Pill Fiend ordered people to deliver 2 medicinal herb atlases. How is it? Shall we begin? His Excellency Pill Fiend asked impatiently. No problem. Duamu Yao had been itching to give it a try since a long time ago. As long as she had the atlases for comparison, with her speed and physical strength, even digging 3 feet into the ground of Medicine Ghost Valley wouldn't be a problem. Han Yunshi tightly gripped the atlases. Amen. Good, begin. This excellency will wait here. Before His Excellency Pill Fiend could finish speaking, Duanmu Yao took the atlases and rushed out the door in a flash. So fast. Ahahaha. This Excellency is looking forward to it. His Excellency Pill Fiend was laughing so hard that he was about to dance with joy. Of course, he was more concerned about Han Yunshi, who told Long Feiyi to offend him. Seeing Duanmu Yao move so quickly, Han Yunshi gave a start before recovering her senses. She grabbed the medicinal plant diagrams and ran outside, but her running speed made His Excellency Pill Fiend anxious for her sake. His Excellency Pill Fiend stood up and followed beside Han Yunshi. Although he seemed to be walking slowly, he was actually faster than Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi, you can't be so slow. This Excellency might as well tell you that in the entire Medicine Ghost Valley, there's only one wall-hitting ghost. If you're late, you'll lose. Han Yunshi turned around and pretended to be shocked. Really? His Excellency Pill Fiend smiled until his long and flirtatious eyes narrowed into a straight line. This Excellency has never lied to a woman. Then many thanks. Han Yunshi smiled sweetly and sped up. When she finally reached the courtyard, Duanmu Yao had already disappeared. Long Feiyi and Duanmu Bei had been waiting outside for a long time. Seeing that Han Yunshi had only just arrived, Duanmu Bei's lips curled into a mocking smile as he teased. Qin Wang Fei, you're so slow. Are you very confident? Unexpectedly, Han Yunshi actually turned around and regained her excited expression from when she saw the prescription. She nodded repeatedly, very much agreeing with Duanmu Bei's words. This time, she didn't look like she wanted to cry but had no tears. Instead, she was truly excited. Duanmu Bei stared blankly. What was wrong with this woman? What did her expression mean? He had to admit that even Long Feiyi was confused by Han Yunshi. What kind of reaction was this? Did she recognize these 3 herbs, or did she just happen to not recognize them? Unexpectedly, Han Yunshi actually ignored them. She found a stone stool to the side and sat down, gently stroking her chest to calm herself down. Seeing this, even the smug His Excellency Pill Fiend quieted down. This woman couldn't be thinking of directly giving up, right? If that was the case, then he should prepare to properly mock Long Feiyi. Han Yunshi really wasn't deliberately mystifying things. She was really, really excited. She couldn't even use words to express it. Looking at His Excellency Pill Fiend, she wanted to pounce over and give him 32 likes. His Excellency Pill Fiend was truly a genius. No. He was a demon genius. The 3 herbs he wrote down were all poisons. Moreover, the most important thing was that these 3 herbs were all in this courtyard. One had to know that this place was the easiest place for people to overlook, so that idiot Duanmu Yao immediately rushed out. There were 2 types of poisonous herbs. One type had to be boiled to extract the poison, so it was classified as a hidden poisonous herb. The other type would reveal the poison even when it sprouted, so it was classified as a dominant poisonous herb. Unfortunately, the 3 herbs that His Excellency Pill Fiend wrote down all belonged to the latter type. When Han Yunshi entered the Medicine Ghost Valley, the detoxification system had warned her several times that there were many poisons in this valley. And when she entered this courtyard, the detoxification system had warned her again. She was most familiar with vegetable-type poisons. She didn't need to examine these dominant poisonous herbs at all. She could casually sweep her eyes over them and know what kind of poisonous herb it was. Duanmu Yao, go look carefully. 7 Death's Hawktail and Single White Yimith aren't ordinary herbs, but very rare ones. Even if there were a second or third one in this valley, His Excellency Pill Fiend himself might not be able to find it in a short amount of time. And there was only one wall-hitting ghost. It should have been specially cultivated by His Excellency Pill Fiend, so it would never be found outside. Leaving Long Feiyi, Duanmu Bei, and His Excellency Pill Fiend to look at her in astonishment, Han Yunshi patted her chest. Such an exciting matter, give her a bit of time to calm down. Finally, Duanmu Bei couldn't bear it anymore and asked unhappily, Qin Wangfei, are you still not going to look? Are you going to admit defeat? Even at death's door, she was still arrogant. In a moment, just wait to cry. Han Yunqi stood up and smiled. Crown Prince Yi, Princess Changle is impatient. Why are you also impatient? As she spoke, she handed over the medicinal herb atlas that she hadn't flipped through to Long Fei Yi. Your Imperial Highness, help me hold this. A trace of amusement flashed through Long Fei Ye's eyes. He did not speak, silently taking the atlas. Duanmu Bei was speechless, his heart growing increasingly uneasy. Could it be that this woman was confident? However, this thought was quickly rejected by him. Impossible. Even if she recognized those medicinal herbs, it was impossible for her to immediately find them. Where did her self-confidence come from? She was only deliberately mystifying things. Thinking of this, Duanmu Bei crossed his arms, his expression cold. He would wait and see. He did not believe that Han Yunqi would fool around. However, His Excellency Pill Fiend, who had a guilty conscience, felt uneasy. This woman was sitting in the courtyard, not leaving. Could it be that she had discovered something? Chapter 63. Looking at Han Yunqi, who didn't seem to intend to leave the courtyard, Pill Fiend couldn't help feeling suspicious. However, he still didn't believe that Han Yunqi could find the 3 herbs. He had racked his brains to think of the 3 herbs, and they all grew in this courtyard. No matter how smart a person was, they wouldn't think of it so quickly. Besides, even if Han Yunqi suspected that the herbs grew in this courtyard, she still had to look for them. Pill Fiend thought, and his eyes fell on the herb atlas in Long Fei Ye's hands. Han Yunqi hadn't even flipped through it. Even if she suspected that the 3 herbs were in this courtyard, she still had to spend time looking for them, and she might not be able to find them. Thinking of this, Pill Fiend felt more relieved. He was still very confident in the question he had set. He glanced at the expressionless and calm Long Fei Yi, and his flirtatious eyes revealed an evil smile. He thought to himself, let's see how arrogant this guy can be. If Han Yunqi can't find the herbs in 3 days, he, who is anxious to save people, will have to beg obediently by then. Unexpectedly, just as Pill Fiend was feeling smug, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He subconsciously looked back and met Han Yunqi's smiling eyes. Pill Fiend was slightly startled and puzzled. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi's beautiful eyes turned and looked at the stone steps on the right side behind him. The stone steps were covered with moss, and there was a circle of dog's tail around the edge of the moss. Following Han Yunqi's gaze, Pill Fiend's eyes fell on the dog's tail grass. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and almost stopped. It should be known that the 7 Deaths Iris was mixed in this circle of dog's tail grass. Could it be? If he could see Pill Fiend's face, he would definitely see his tightly knitted brows. No, this must be a coincidence. Han Yunqi was a good-for-nothing. How could she recognize the 7 Deaths Iris without looking at the herb atlas? It should be known that many pharmacists didn't even know what the 7 Deaths Iris looked like. His Excellency Pill Fiend quickly withdrew his line of sight, a malicious glint flashing through his eyes. He firmly believed that Han Yunqi couldn't find her. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi stood up and personally walked over. This time, His Excellency Pill Fiend's line of sight immediately followed her. He saw Han Yunqi accurately grasping an herb that was very similar to a green dog's tail and was about to uproot it. Stop! His Excellency Pill Fiend cried out in alarm. This voice was not the least bit eccentric, nor was it the least bit deep or old. It was very, very fierce, and one could vaguely hear a trace of his true voice. Han Yunqi didn't let go. She smiled and said, 7 Deadly Iris, right? Although she had already grasped it, His Excellency Pill Fiend was still somewhat unable to accept it from her own mouth. Was this the rhythm of a piece of trash going against the heavens? Pill Fiend narrowed his eyes and didn't answer for a long time. Han Yunqi shrugged and pretended to pull it out. His Excellency Pill Fiend was furious and had no choice but to answer yes. As soon as these words came out, Duanmu Bei suddenly stood up from the side with an expression of disbelief. Han Yunqi, Han Yunqi, how did you know that the 7 Deadly Iris was in the courtyard, and how did you find it? His Excellency Pill Fiend was also very curious. This woman didn't even look at the atlas and found it with a single glance. She didn't even have the time to look for it, and seemed to have found it with a single glance. Because I'm smart. Han Yunxi smiled and let go. This seven deadly iris was still very young. She was someone who loved medicine and wouldn't recklessly waste a natural treasure. Of course, the more important reason was that she couldn't afford to compensate His Excellency Pill Fiend. Smart? I think you're cheating. You're clearly a piece of trash. So how did you know about the seven deadly iris? Duamu Bei mocked and ridiculed. Just now, someone personally said that it was fair. What are you going to act shamelessly now? Crown Prince Yi, I only found one. Don't be so unconfident in your sister, Han Yunxi joked. Her words made Duanmu Bei speechless. If he continued, it would undoubtedly be a slap to his and Yao Yao's face. Heh, this crown prince doesn't believe that you can find a second one. Duanmu Bei said hatefully. This lord also doesn't believe that you can find a second one. His Excellency Pill Fiend narrowed his eyes and stared at Han Yunxi, his gaze never leaving her. His voice and gaze were faint. Even if it was such a coincidence that Han Yunxi knew about the seven deadly iris, she couldn't possibly recognize Simple Bai Yimi, right? He didn't believe this. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi faintly smiled. Her quick-witted and crafty eyes moved again as she looked at the grass under the fence in front of her. With his first experience, even Duanmu Bei nervously followed her to look. Duanmu Bei looked over, but he didn't understand anything and couldn't see anything. However, His Excellency Pill Fiend instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. His slightly narrowed eyes suddenly became serious. He didn't need to follow Han Yunxi's gaze to know what was in the grass under the fence in front of them. Some fine wildflowers bloomed in that small patch of grass. Among them, there was only one white flower. It was very inconspicuous, but it was the priceless Simple Bai Yimi grass. Could it be that Han Yunxi even recognized Simple Bai Yimi? Han Yunxi withdrew her gaze and looked at His Excellency Pill Fiend's stiff body. She smiled especially brightly. Simple Bai Yimi, do you still need me to point it out? His Excellency Pill Fiend didn't answer. His gaze was firmly fixed on her eyes, as if it was really nailed there. His Excellency Pill Fiend had never failed in the field of medicine. Although he didn't personally participate in the competition today, he was the one who came up with the questions. He originally didn't intend for others to find it, but he didn't expect that Han Yunxi would actually find two plants in less than an hour. Although she said she was looking for it, she actually didn't look for it at all, okay? She even recognized Simple Bai Yimi. What happened to the so-called trash? Even if she was an extremely powerful pharmacist, recognizing the seven deaths hawthorn was already very impressive. Simple Bai Yimi was a medicine even rarer than the seven deaths hawthorn, and it was also a poison. His Excellency Pill Fiend, that little white flower is Simple Bai Yimi. Do you want me to go over and point it out? It's that white one, just one. Han Yunxi deliberately explained in detail. His Excellency Pill Fiend took a deep breath. He racked his brains to come up with this question, but it was actually so easily solved by someone. There was also the last poisonous herb, Ghost Hits the Wall. Could it be that she had already found it long ago? His Excellency Pill Fiend still didn't reply, but Duanmu Bei abruptly picked up Long Fei's illustrated collection of medicinal plants from the coffee table. He flipped to the marked pages and found a description of Shan Bai Yimi. He deliberately walked over to compare. With this comparison, Duanmu Bei was stupefied on the spot. It really was Simple Bai Yimi. Crown Prince Yi, it's correct, right? Han Yunxi asked with a smile. The atlas fell to the ground. Duanmu Bei slowly stood up, his face frighteningly dark. You also found the last ghost hits the wall? A trace of craftiness flashed through Han Yunxi's eyes, and she suddenly looked to the right. Duanmu Bei reflexively looked to the right, and then Han Yunxi looked to the left. Duanmu Bei also turned to the left. Ha ha ha, it's under your feet. Han Yunxi laughed loudly. Duanmu Bei actually lowered his head. Seeing this, Han Yunxi laughed so hard that she almost fell down. There was nothing under Duanmu Bei's feet. He was actually tricked. Duanmu Bei's face alternated between white and red, and his hands clenched into fists. His Excellency Pill Fiend's eyes were dark and gloomy. He had personally planted ghost hits the wall on the roof, and it looked no different from weeds. Not to mention pharmacists, even many top-notch poison masters who came here couldn't find it. Han Yunqi tricked Duanmu Bei because she probably couldn't find it, right? Thinking of this, Pill Fiend regained some confidence and quickly calmed down. He reminded her in a strange tone, Han Yunqi, you found 7 deaths Hawkdale and Shan by Yimi, but if you can't find ghost hits the wall, you can't win. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Han Yunqi's eyes became meaningful. Seeing this, Pill Fiend panicked. However, this meaningful look quickly disappeared, and Han Yunqi inadvertently glanced at the roof. This inadvertent glance was far more meaningful than the previous one, and it made Pill Fiend's heart jump. Could it be that she even found ghost hits the wall? Was she a genius? In order to find this ghost hits the wall to plant, Pill Fiend had traversed mountains and ridges for 3 days and 3 nights. Seeing Pill Fiend's nervousness, Han Yunqi smiled indifferently and didn't say anything. However, Duanmu Bei saw her and Pill Fiend exchanging glances and immediately understood. Ghost hits the wall was also planted in this courtyard. How could it be like this? These were all very rare herbs, and Pill Fiend had just said that there was only one ghost hits the wall. How could Yao Yao, who had rushed out long ago, find it? Duanmu Bei couldn't care less about where the third herb was. Right now, he was most concerned about his little sister. Although he was a cruel and insidious person, he loved his little sister to the bone. He couldn't bear to see her suffer even the slightest grievance. Pill Fiend, you asked a good question. Duanmu Bei angrily turned and was about to leave, but Long Fei Ye's figure flashed and blocked his path. He coldly said, the rules were just set. Bystanders can't help. Don't forget. Duanmu Bei was angry, but he had no reason to leave. Pill Fiend was present, so he didn't dare to act shamelessly. He could only sit on the side and sulk. This time, they were definitely going to lose. Pill Fiend wasn't in the mood to care about Duanmu Bei. At this time, his attention was all on Han Yunqi, and his gaze never left her. He really wanted to know whether Han Yunqi recognized ghost hits the wall. He was waiting for Han Yunqi to say it. And the helpless Duanmu Bei could only wait, waiting for Han Yunqi to reveal the answer and then find Yao Yao. However, Han Yunqi just sat there without saying anything, and her eyes didn't move. At this time, Duanmu Yao Yao was searching for the 7 deaths iris all over the valley. She looked at the pictures and explanations on the herb atlas 3 or 4 times, and she thought that she was smart enough to find the foxtail bush first. Thus, she flew all over the valley, and whenever she saw a large patch of foxtail bush, she would land and carefully compare it with the herb atlas. How could she know everything that happened in Pill Fiend's courtyard? As she searched, she didn't forget to think about Han Yunqi. She thought that Han Yunqi would be courting death just by looking for the foxtail bush. After eliminating a large patch of foxtail bush, Duanmu Yao Yao tapped her feet lightly and continued to fly to the next area. Although the task was a little difficult, she was still very confident. Soon, the sky began to darken. It was already dark, but Han Yunqi still hadn't found ghost hits the wall. Of course, she never left the courtyard. Medicine Ghost Valley lit a lantern in the courtyard. Duanmu Bei paced back and forth at the entrance of the courtyard, his face pale and his heart burning with anxiety. However, he couldn't go out and warn her. Pill Fiend squatted on a flower bed at the side, occasionally glancing at the roof and occasionally glancing at Han Yunqi. He still waited patiently. Chapter 64. For the entire afternoon, Duanmu Bei had been urging Han Yunqi to hurry up and find the wall-hitting ghost. Now that things had reached a point of no return, he would rather lose early than let Yao Yao foolishly search outside. But Han Yunqi wasn't in a hurry. At this time, she was sitting at the stone table with Long Fei Yi, drinking tea and eating snacks. Long Fei Yi lifted his robe and sat casually, his entire body emitting a cold and domineering aura as if he was the master of this courtyard. Han Yunqi propped up her head with one hand and held a teacup with the other, looking especially relaxed. Regarding the wall-hitting ghost, she didn't say anything and Long Fei Yi also didn't ask anything. However, he had to admit that this woman once again gave him a surprise. a surprise that could even be called a pleasant surprise. For no reason, he actually firmly believed that she would be able to find the wall-hitting ghost. Long Fei inadvertently raised his eyes to look at Han Yunqi, his deep and cold eyes flashing with a hint of recognition that even he himself didn't notice. This was the first time he acknowledged a woman like this. How many more skills did this woman have that he didn't know about? Finally, the sky was completely dark, but Duanmu Yao still hadn't returned. Duanmu Bei couldn't bear it anymore and strode in front of Han Yunqi. Qin Wang Fei, since you've already found the wall-hitting ghost, then show it to avoid wasting everyone's time. With Han Yunqi's relaxed appearance, only a ghost would believe that she hadn't found the wall-hitting ghost. If she dragged on like this, it was undoubtedly purposely tormenting Yao Yao. Lord Pilfiend's eyes lit up and a trace of complexity flashed through his eyes. He hoped that Han Yunqi could find the wall-hitting ghost to amaze him, but at the same time, he didn't want the question that he had carefully set to be solved so easily. Of course, what he hated the most was that he couldn't make Long Fei suffer. Han Yunqi raised her eyebrows and looked at Duanmu Bei, saying seriously, "Crown Prince Yi thinks too highly of me. From what I know, the wall-hitting ghost is very strange. Only one can grow on a mountain, or else all of them will die. This valley is so big, and His Excellency Pilfiend also said that there was only one medicinal herb. It really isn't easy to find. How could I find it so quickly?" Hearing Han Yunqi's words, His Excellency Pilfiend's eyes revealed a look of appreciation. At this point, he couldn't help but admire this woman. She even knew about the ghost labyrinth's habits. It seemed that she was a very knowledgeable fellow. She was young and a woman at that. She wasn't simple at all. His Excellency Pilfiend looked at Han Yunqi. As he looked, his eyes gradually narrowed, and admiration gradually replaced the original hostility. However, Han Yunqi's words were a form of mockery to Duanmu Bei. His Excellency Pilfiend had just said that there was only one wall-hitting ghost. Han Yunqi's emphasis was undoubtedly hinting to Duanmu Bei that she was doing it on purpose. Wasn't Duanmu Yao's speed very fast? She might as well take a few more laps outside. In any case, it was already dark, and she didn't want to leave for the time being. Duanmu Bei clenched his fist so tightly that it made cracking sounds. If it was Han Yunqi's man, he would definitely throw a punch at him. If Han Yunqi delayed in the courtyard for a day, Yao Yao would have to work hard for a day. If she delayed for a month, Yao Yao would have to work hard for a month, or even a year. Yao Yao was completely passive. How Duanmu Bei hoped that Yao Yao would be enlightened and come back to the courtyard to search. Compared to searching all over the valley, searching in such a small courtyard was simply too easy. However, even he himself didn't believe that Yao Yao would be enlightened and come back. Firstly, Yao Yao wasn't that smart. Secondly, he knew that girl's temperament. If she didn't find a single medicinal herb, she wouldn't come back because of her face. Duanmu Bei's heart was stifled with anger. He couldn't go down or up. The more he looked at Han Yunqi, the more his heart hurt. This crafty woman, what number one trash? What inability to recognize medicinal ingredients? It's all an act. Time passed little by little. His Excellency Pilfiend sent for dinner. Long Fei and Han Yunqi both ate, but Duanmu Bei didn't have the slightest appetite. Yao Yao, Yao Yao. Come back for a bit. However, after an entire night, Duanmu Yao still hadn't returned. According to the old steward's report, Princess Changle had been seen flying all over the valley with a torch. Hearing this, Han Yunqi laughed out loud in front of everyone, nearly causing Duanmu Bei to vomit blood. With Long Fei watching over Duanmu Bei, Han Yunqi was very relieved. She went to sleep early in the guest room. It had to be said that she made it so that even His Excellency Pilfiend couldn't sleep. He accompanied Long Fei to watch over Duanmu Bei. After the long journey, Han Yunqi slept especially deeply and soundly. The next day, when the sun was high in the sky, she lazily walked into the courtyard. "Good morning." Han Yunqi was in a good mood and greeted everyone. Long Fei raised his brows and glanced at her, not saying anything. His Excellency Pilfiend muttered to himself, not knowing what to say. Duanmu Bei narrowed his eyes and suddenly rushed in front of Han Yunqi. However, at almost the same time, Long Fei also arrived in front of her, protecting her behind him. Cold eyes gazed at Duanmu Bei, a trace of displeasure flashing through his sharp eyes. Although she knew that Long Fei was protecting her for the sake of the lifeblood pill, Han Yunqi still felt a bit of warmth in her heart. At the very least, this proved that she was worthy of the protection of the #1 king of the world. What exactly do you all want? Duanmu Bei finally exploded. Although it was only one day and one night, his heart ached for his little sister. Yao Yao was a golden branch and jade leaf. Since childhood, she had been doted on by everyone. Even when she was training at her sect, she had never suffered such hardships. What's more, this was basically Han Yunqi's scheme. Han Yunqi was here to laugh at them. The longer this dragged on, the more humiliating it would be for them. This was the first time Duanmu Bei had suffered in front of a woman. Such humiliation was unbearable. Crown Prince Yi, don't be impatient. I haven't found the third medicinal herb yet. If you can't wait, you can surrender. I won't stop you. Han Yunqi seriously suggested. As soon as these words came out, Duanmu Bei suddenly raised his hand and angrily said, Han Yunqi, you? A trace of killing intent flashed through Long Fei's eyes. He grabbed Duanmu Bei's wrist and coldly said, Qin Wang Fei, you can't afford to be fierce. Seeing Long Fei's killing intent, Duanmu Bei was shocked. He had known Long Fei for so many years, but when had he ever seen Long Fei so serious about a woman? Duke of Qin, don't tell me you really exchanged the lifeblood pill for this woman. Duanmu Bei probed. Long Fei fiercely pushed him away and pushed him to the side of the wall. He coldly replied, It has nothing to do with you. Either surrender or wait on the side. Duanmu Bei clenched his fists until they cracked, but he had no choice but to continue waiting. Soon, half a day passed. Han Yunqi basked in the sun while drinking tea. From time to time, she would look at Duanmu Bei with a smile that wasn't a smile, full of provocation. Duanmu Bei was already angry, so how could he withstand Han Yunqi's provocation? He had been proud his entire life, but this was the first time a woman had looked at him like this. How could he tolerate this? Finally, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He stood up and hatefully said, Lord Pill Fiend, we surrender. Immediately call Yao Yao back. Surrender. Lord Pill Fiend dug his ears and loudly said, What? What did Crown Prince Yi say? This lord didn't hear it. When had Duanmu Bei, the bloodthirsty crown prince, ever been so sullen? When had he ever admitted defeat so easily? We surrender. If you want the 7 stars caterpillar grass, then immediately call Yao Yao back. Duanmu Bei's anger overflowed to the heavens. His voice was so gloomy that it seemed to come from the underworld. A trace of disdain flashed through the depths of Pill Fiend's eyes. He immediately ordered someone, Go bring Princess Changle back. Duanmu Bei didn't even want to look at Han Yunqi. Lifting his robe, he sat to the side, his face dark. Han Yunqi was overjoyed. She looked towards Long Fei with a smile, not avoiding the taboo of angering Duanmu Bei. Natural and unrestrained, she loudly said, Long Fei, I won. Han Yunqi's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Her entire being radiated with a threatening radiance. This radiance caused Long Fei's gaze to be fixed on her face, not moving away for a long time. Seeing that Long Fei was expressionless and had no reaction, Han Yunqi raised 2 fingers and made a V sign. Her smile became even more brilliant. Hey, we won. Long Fei pulled at the corners of his mouth. It was unknown whether or not he was smiling. In short, it was very stiff. Han Yunqi really wanted to roll her eyes. Thinking about it, she decided to forget it. This large block of ice was born with facial paralysis. She was already used to it. Duanmu Bei was originally anxious. Hearing that Han Yunqi was so happy, he was unable to restrain his anger. Originally, he didn't want to look at her, but at this moment, he was fiercely glaring at her. If that gaze could kill, Han Yunqi would have been annihilated long ago. On the other hand, Pill Fiend faintly stared at Long Fei. If it weren't for Han Yunqi's competition, he definitely wouldn't have allowed Long Fei to take away the lifeblood pill so easily. Where had this fellow found such an extraordinary woman? If she could stay in Medicine Ghost Valley, it would be a good choice. Soon, Duanmu Yao was brought back. Her entire person was much dimmer. Her long hair was disheveled, and her originally spotless white dress was speckled with dirt. She probably hadn't slept for the entire night. Her eyes were bloodshot and revealed an unconcealable exhaustion. The person who brought her back didn't tell her what happened. As soon as she entered the courtyard, she saw that Han Yunqi was also there. Duamu Yao immediately perked up and sneered. What, Han Yunqi, are you going to admit defeat? Don't mention 3 herbs. This woman definitely couldn't find even one. If she didn't admit defeat, why did they bring her back? Han Yunqi didn't say anything. She looked at her up and down with great interest. Duanmu Bei was distressed for his sister and angry. He pulled Duanmu Yao over and said unhappily, "Take out the 7 stars caterpillar grass." When these words came out, Duanmu Yao was stunned. What? They won. Take it out. Duanmu Bei's expression darkened even more. Duanmu Yao was stunned again, then angrily said, "Impossible. How did they win? Where's the item?" Although she knew that her imperial brother wouldn't lie to her, she still couldn't believe it. This was too sudden. It was your imperial brother who admitted defeat to Lord Pillfiend. If you don't believe me, you can ask Lord Pillfiend. Han Yunqi smiled innocently. Duanmu Yao abruptly looked at Lord Pillfiend. Seeing Lord Pillfiend nod, she inconceivably retreated a few steps. She then grabbed Duanmu Bei's collar and angrily questioned, "Who told you to admit defeat? Who told you to admit defeat?" Duanmu Bei was a dignified crown prince, yet he didn't get angry when his sister grabbed his collar like this. Instead, he looked distressed for her and explained in a low voice. However, before Duanmu Yao could finish listening, she was already furious. Obtaining the lifeblood pill was one thing, but losing face was another. How could she lose to Han Yunqi? And in front of her senior brother? Where's the item? This princess wants to see it for herself. Duanmu Yao was extremely furious. She rushed in front of Han Yunqi, and even Duanmu Bei couldn't stop her. Han Yunqi was very willing to enlighten her. She pointed at the 7 death's hawktails and shone by Yimi in the courtyard for Duanmu Yao to see. Duanmu Yao was surprised. After a while, she came back to her senses and realized how stupid she had been. Chapter 65. Duanmu Yao finally realized that not only had she been humiliated, but she had also brought shame upon herself. Han Yunqi had not left the courtyard at all. She had even found the ghostly labyrinth. Duanmu Yao had been stalling for time, allowing Duanmu Yao to run all over the mountain like a clown. Han Yunqi, you. Duanmu Yao was both embarrassed and angry. Pointing at Han Yunqi, she was so angry that she was almost speechless. You cheated. You come from a medical family and are familiar with medicinal ingredients, but I know nothing about them. This is unfair. I refuse to accept this. Han Yunqi had long known that this princess had no credibility to speak of. Looking towards Pillfiend, she said, "Your Excellency, Pillfiend, you must uphold justice." At this moment, Pillfiend found Han Yunqi pleasing to the eye. Eccentrically, he warned, "Hee, Princess Changle, before the competition, it was you who said that the rules were fair. Now that you want to go back on your word, this Darren will be very unhappy." Duanmu Yao did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. She still wanted to argue, but Duanmu Bei pulled her back, firmly gripping her wrist. In a low voice, he said, "Enough. This is not the place to make trouble." Although His Excellency Pillfiend was eccentric, unpredictable, and even crazy, he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. After being humiliated once, Duanmu Bei didn't want to be known as someone who couldn't afford to lose a bet. He also didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Even her imperial brother was somewhat angry. Although Duanmu Yao was extremely unwilling, she still turned around and obediently took out the 7 stars caterpillar grass from her chest. As soon as she handed it over to her imperial brother, tears streamed out of her eyes. Glancing resentfully at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, she angrily turned around and ran out. "Han Yunqi, I hate you. Next time, I definitely won't let you off." Duanmu Bei handed the 7 stars caterpillar grass to Pillfiend. Coldly, he said, "Your Excellency, a bet is a bet. This one keeps his word." Pillfiend revealed a bony hand, grabbing it into his black robes. Soon, he began to cackle strangely, no longer paying attention to Duanmu Bei. Duke of Qin, may we meet again someday. Duanmu Bei still had a bit of grace. He cupped his hands and bowed. Although he was talking to Long Feiyi, he was warning Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi, you really are a strange girl, but it's a pity you hurt Yao Yao and humiliated this prince. It's best if you don't fall into this prince's hands one day. After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Han Yunqi had seen even scarier warnings, so she wasn't afraid. She muttered, if you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. How is this admitting defeat? After hiding the 7 stars caterpillar grass, His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed strangely. Qin Wang Fei, this Darren admires you, sincerely. Han Yunqi immediately felt her hair stand on end. She subconsciously hid behind Long Feiyi. She couldn't accept this strange thing's submission. Long Feiyi handed over the poisonous python pill and reminded him coldly, His Excellency Pill Fiend, you should take out the life-blood pills now. As soon as he saw Long Feiyi, His Excellency Pill Fiend immediately put on an arrogant attitude and unhurriedly said, just wait. As he spoke, he unhurriedly went into the room to get it. After a long time, he finally returned with a brocade box and slowly opened it. Inside the box was a blood-red medicinal pills the size of a pellet. Upon closer inspection, one could even faintly smell the scent of blood. This was the lifeblood pills that Gu Beiwa had mentioned. Han Yunqi's eyes immediately lit up. She reached out to take it, but who knew that His Excellency Pill Fiend would hurriedly take it back and laugh mischievously. Qin Wang Fei, if you tell me where the wall-hitting ghost is in this courtyard, this thing will belong to you. How about it? Han Yunqi was stunned. Just as she was about to speak, Long Feiyi coldly said, Guqi Sha, are you going to go back on your word? This Darren isn't talking to you. His Excellency Pill Fiend's cold voice changed faster than flipping a book. However, Han Yunqi said, what if I'm not willing to tell you? His Excellency Pill Fiend's eyes darkened. His killing intent suddenly appeared, but it was quickly concealed. He took a deep breath and handed over the lifeblood pills with both hands. Han Yunqi was afraid that he would regret it, so she hurriedly put away the pouch for safekeeping. Then, she took a deep breath. The most important thing was finally in her hands. Long Tianma's illness could be considered to have mostly recovered. Now that they had the item, they naturally had to hurry back. Everyone in the Eastern Palace was probably anxious. Unexpectedly, His Excellency Pill Fiend actually followed them all the way to the door. He chuckled mischievously and pestered them. Qin Wang Fei, just tell me. You really found it, right? Han Yunqi smiled mysteriously. I'll tell you when I come back next time. His Excellency Pill Fiend still wanted to pester her, but Long Feiyi turned around and gave him a cold glance. His Excellency Pill Fiend only felt the killing intent around him suddenly rise. His narrow eyes narrowed with a dangerous glint as he provoked him back. However, when Han Yunqi and Long Feiyi walked out of the valley, His Excellency Pill Fiend didn't pester them anymore. Instead, he watched them from afar. Only when he saw their figures disappear did His Excellency Pill Fiend chuckle. Unexpectedly, not only was this voice extremely magnetic, it was also deep and pleasant to the ears. It was clearly the voice of a young man. His hands stretched out from his black robe. They were gentle like white jade and slender and good-looking. They were completely different from their previous emaciated appearance. Even the precious poisonous python pill and 7 stars caterpillar grass lying in his palms weren't as eye-catching as his hands. He muttered to himself with a mischievous smile, Han Yunqi, interesting. We'll meet again someday. On the way back, Long Feiyi asked Han Yunqi, where's the wall-hitting ghost in the courtyard? She didn't expect this fellow to be curious as well. Han Yunqi said mysteriously, I'm not telling you. His expression stiffened, a little surprised by Han Yunqi's reaction. But he quickly recovered his usual cold demeanor. The two of them hurried on their way and arrived at Tianning's capital 3 days later in the morning. Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi's absence had left the Emperor and Empress worried sick. If the Duke of Qin hadn't taken them away, everyone would have assumed that Han Yunqi had run away. It was still early in the morning, but the Eastern Palace was already packed with people. Emperor Tianhui came over as soon as he finished court, while the Empress Dowager and Empress stayed close to him. Even Han Kongan didn't leave, but respectfully waited behind the Empress Dowager. He didn't dare to voice his grievances. Gu Beiwei was inside the room, keeping watch by the Crown Prince's bedside. Your Majesty, the Duke of Qin and Qin Wangfei have entered the palace and are heading this way. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi had just entered the palace when eunuch Shui scrambled over to report. Emperor Tianhui was thrilled. Did you bring back the lifeblood pill? Hearing this, Han Kongan grew nervous and stared fixedly at eunuch Shui, waiting for his reply. Han Yunqi had already analyzed the illness so thoroughly and insisted that her diagnosis wasn't wrong. Although Han Kongan had been forced into silence, he still refused to believe Han Yunqi's diagnosis. As long as they got the lifeblood pill, Han Yunqi could start treatment. Then they'd know whether he or Han Yunqi was right. The Crown Prince's stomach was a child, so he wanted to see how Han Yunqi would turn the child into a malignant tumor. Eunuch Shui was in a difficult position. Your servant forgot to ask. Actually, Eunuch Shui didn't dare to ask. What right did he have to ask His Highness Duke of Qin? Even if he did, His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't spare him a glance. Useless thing. Hurry up and go, the Empress Dowager scolded. She was even more anxious than Emperor Tianhui. Yes. Your servant will go right away. Eunuch Shui was about to leave when Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi entered the courtyard. The two of them were travel-worn from the journey, but still looked as elegant as ever. Long Fei Yi, especially, entered the courtyard. His tall and proud figure immediately gave everyone a sense of pressure. Only the emperor's aura could rival his. Emperor Tianhui might be impatient, but he wasn't flustered. As soon as he saw Long Fei Yi enter, he stepped forward and asked with concern, Duke of Qin, did your journey go smoothly? Thanks to Imperial Brother's good fortune, everything went smoothly. Long Fei Yi bowed with his hands clasped in front. Han Yunqi followed suit and bowed by his side. Then that's good. You may all rise, Emperor Tianhui said with a smile. Emperor Tianhui smiled. He didn't look anxious, but the people around him were burning with impatience. All of them were staring at Long Fei and Han Yunqi, waiting for news. Then, did you bring back the lifeblood pill? Emperor Tianhui finally asked about business. Everyone grew nervous at these words, especially Han Kongan, who knitted his brows. Inside the room, Gu Beiwei and Crown Prince Long Tianma both stopped moving to listen in silence. Long Fei Yi was expressionless. He wasn't anxious like the rest, because the item wasn't in his hands. Han Yunqi swept her eyes over the crowd, secretly delighted. Making you all wait is worth this Wang Fei's hard work. Her gaze swept past Han Kongan, who immediately grew alarmed. What does this damn blast mean by this? Han Yunqi had only delayed for a few seconds, but impatient people couldn't wait. Duke of Qin, did you all get the lifeblood pill? The Empress couldn't help but ask. Long Fei Yi didn't speak, but glanced towards Han Yunqi. His eyes were telling her to stop before going too far. All right. Han Yunqi smiled and immediately took out a brocade box from her sleeve. This is the lifeblood pill. We got it without a hitch. In a flash, everyone's eyes focused on them. Emperor Tianhui didn't dare to be careless, but quickly called out, Imperial Physician Gu, come over here. Gu Beiwei came out of the room and walked over with quick steps. Imperial Physician Gu, this is the lifeblood pill? Emperor Tianhui asked seriously. As soon as he smelled the scent of blood and saw the color, Gu Beiwei was certain. Delighted, he said, to reply, Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, and esteemed Empress, this really is the lifeblood pill. The Crown Prince's illness can be cured. Congratulations to Your Majesty. Congratulations to Your Majesty. With Gu Beiwei's confirmation, everyone felt relieved. But with the lifeblood pill in hand, it meant that Han Yunqi's treatment was about to begin. Actually, Emperor Tianhui and the Empress Dowager didn't completely trust Han Yunqi's diagnosis, but they were more willing to believe in Han Yunqi than Han Kongan's diagnosis. Of course, this was also Emperor Tianhui's last chance for the Crown Prince. If the Crown Prince was cured, then everything would be fine. If not, then Emperor Tianhui would have to give up on the Crown Prince. The Empress was the clearest about this complicated relationship. To Emperor Tianhui, he had many sons, But to the Empress, she only had the Crown Prince as her only son. She didn't care whether Han Yunqi's diagnosis was right or wrong, or whether the Crown Prince's stomach was filled with a malignant tumor or a child. She only wanted one result, and that was the Crown Prince was fine. Han Yunqi, then can we detoxify the poison now? Emperor Tianhui's eyes revealed traces of nervousness. But Han Yunqi only said, no. What? She already had the lifeblood pill, but it still wasn't enough? Everyone fell silent at her words. Even Long Fei knitted his brows and looked over. Chapter 66. Why couldn't Han Yunqi start expelling the poison even though she'd gotten her hands on the lifeblood pill? Everyone was astonished, but Han Yunqi explained, I'm too tired. Let's start in the afternoon to avoid any mistakes. Han Yunqi was exhausted from rushing all the way here. Everyone else was anxious, but she wasn't. She had to take care of her own body. As a doctor, being responsible for herself meant being responsible for the patient. Although she'd gotten her hands on the lifeblood pill, expelling the poison was only a minor operation. It was still an incision. If there was a single mistake during the process, the consequences would be hard to explain. Hearing her words, Emperor Tianhui's eyes flashed with displeasure. Still, he dreaded the words to avoid any mistakes, so he didn't say much, but nodded in agreement. Han Yunqi slept the entire morning in a side room of the Eastern Palace. Besides Long Fei, no one else left. Although they were all impatient, they could only wait for her all morning. After waking up in the afternoon and eating some snacks, Han Yunqi finally returned to the courtyard. Gu Beiwei had already made some preparations and was waiting for her. When she didn't see Long Fei, Han Yunqi's eyes flashed with astonishment, but she didn't think too much about it. Han Yunqi, you're awake now, aren't you? Emperor Tianhui asked loftily. To reply, Your Majesty, Yunqi is much more awake. Han Yunqi bowed as she replied truthfully. That's good. You should know that if anything goes wrong. Emperor Tianhui didn't finish his sentence, but it was more intimidating than a warning. Yunqi understands. Han Yunqi lowered her head, her eyes deep and calm. Since Emperor Tianhui had spoken, she naturally had to make her own demands. Your Majesty, when Chen Xia is treating, no one is allowed to be present besides Imperial Physician Gu. At these words, the Empress was the first to feel uneasy. She said coldly, Han Yunqi, what kind of attitude is this? On one side, Han Kongan seized the chance to question her. Qin Wangfei, could it be that there's some secret plot behind your treatment that needs to be cleared out? Or perhaps, the Crown Prince's stomach is already a fetus, and you're afraid that others will see it? Han Yunqi coldly glanced at him and said sarcastically, why don't you treat him, Divine Dr. Han? You. Han Kongan had no words to reply, but turned to Emperor Tianhui instead. Your Majesty, as this commoner sees it, there must be something fishy going on here. Gu Beiwei knew Han Yunqi's habits and was about to explain when Han Yunqi spoke to Emperor Tianhui. Your Majesty, this treatment is extremely taxing on the mind. You're all under too much pressure in Yunqi's presence, so you can't concentrate. In order to reduce the risk of treatment, and for the sake of the Crown Prince's safety, I asked the Emperor to understand. As for Divine Dr. Han's suspicions, Yunqi said long ago that once the poison in the Crown Prince's stomach is cured, Divine Dr. Han can personally examine him. As soon as Han Yunqi entered the zone, her solemn and professional side was revealed. Although her voice wasn't loud, it carried a sense of authority that couldn't be ignored. Without waiting for Emperor Tianhui to reply, Han Yunqi added, aside from this, Yunqi has another request. During Yunqi's treatment, I hope that you can ensure that the surroundings are quiet and safe, so as to eliminate unnecessary disturbances and accidents. Everyone present was the most respected figure in the empire, but right now, the doctor held the highest authority. Although Han Yunqi's attitude made Emperor Tianhui very uncomfortable, he could only agree to her demands at this juncture. Leaving aside the issue of responsibility, Emperor Tianhui didn't want to see any mistakes. After the treatment, he'd have people inspect the scene immediately. Han Yunqi wouldn't be able to play any tricks. All right, Jin agrees. I hope you won't disappoint Jin either. Go on in, Emperor Tianhui said coldly. Since Emperor Tianhui had agreed, what else could Han Kongan say? He glared hatefully at Han Yunqi, anticipating the examination after the treatment. Many thanks for your Majesty's understanding. Yunqi won't disappoint you. Han Yunqi was still very confident. After all, once the problem of excessive blood loss was solved, the treatment would be simple. Only then did she rise and prepare to enter the rooms with Gu Beiwei. At this moment, the Empress chased after them and took her hand. Yunqi, I'll leave Tianma to you. Han Yunqi was about to speak when the Empress lowered her voice and warned her cold. Han Yunqi, you better make sure that Tianma is safe and sound. Otherwise, I definitely won't let you off. As the Empress spoke, her lips rose into an arrogant smile. Of course, if you cure Tianma, I and the Empress Dowager won't treat you unfairly. Han Yunqi laughed coldly in her heart. Wasn't this trouble caused by the Empress? She didn't want to be treated unfairly. As long as the Empress didn't cause her any more trouble, she'd be thankful. Han Yunqi didn't reply, but gave the Empress a deep look. Without a trace, she pushed aside her hand and immediately entered the room, personally closing the door behind her. Seeing this, the Empress was so angry that her face turned black. What a Han Yunqi! If you weren't the Duke of Qin's official consort, I could crush you to death with a single finger. You better be so confident when you come out later. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. Once the door closed, the Empress Dowager and Empress didn't leave. They stood outside the door and eavesdropped, hoping to hear something. The Empress was angry, but more than that, she was nervous. The Emperor didn't go far, but sat down in the courtyard. Seeing the Empress Dowager and Empress sneaking around in front of the door, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. Muhu, come and sit, he said mildly. Only then did the Empress Dowager come over, her eyes full of worry. I just heart. It's up and down. It's uneasy. The Empress was about to agree when she saw the impatience in the Emperor's eyes. She could only give up and accompany the Empress Dowager to sit on the side. Waiting for even a second longer felt like an eternity. Inside the room, the busy Han Yunqi had long forgotten the time. She had already done the necessary checks on Long Tianma. After confirming that she could use the scalpel, she immediately anesthetized him with medicine. This anesthesia had to be a full-body anesthesia. First, it would be very uncomfortable to take the poison later. Second, if she used the scalpel, Long Tianma might not be able to endure it. Of course, the most important thing was that she didn't want Long Tianma to see too much. The new anesthetic in her detoxification system was very useful. After a while, Long Tianma completely fainted. Gu Beiwei then began to decoct the medicine. The large bag of poison was turned into a small bowl of poison soup. It was indeed poison. The taste was especially strange. Even Gu Beiwei, who grew up in piles of medicine, couldn't stand it. Fortunately, Long Tianma was unconscious. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for him to drink the medicine. After decocting the medicine, Gu Beiwei personally forced Long Tianma to drink it. Han Yunqi walked to the medicine pot. Just as she was about to dispose of the poison dregs, she suddenly stopped and hesitated. The smell of the dregs was stronger than she expected. Whether it was hidden in her medical bag or Gu Beiwei's case, it could be smelled out. If it was found, it would be difficult to explain. What should I do? Han Yunqi looked back at Gu Beiwei. Seeing that his attention was on Long Tianma, her eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. She moved her back to Gu Beiwei to block his view. However, Han Yunqi didn't know that at this moment, a pair of cold and deep eyes were staring at her from the roof. Long Fei saw Han Yunqi's strange behavior at a glance and immediately suspected that there was a problem with the medicine pot. However, as a non-professional, he couldn't understand what was going on. Could it be that Han Yunqi was hiding something from Gu Beiwei? At this moment, Han Yunqi's hand was lightly grasping the dregs of medicine. She seemed to be smelling them, but in the split second that Long Fei was distracted, the dregs of medicine in Han Yunqi's hand vanished into thin air. Long Fei suddenly frowned and immediately moved a tile to let himself see more clearly. He saw that the dregs in the medicine pot were already empty. Han Yunqi turned around to open Gu Beiwei's case and took out a bag of medicine. Where was it? Did he see wrongly, or did it really disappear into thin air? Long Fei couldn't figure it out. The safest way was to store the dregs of poison in the detox system. They couldn't even be smelled. Han Yunqi glanced at Gu Beiwei and saw that he was still pouring Long Tianma's poison down his throat. She exhaled and relaxed. She took out the ingredients she'd prepared beforehand from Gu Beiwei's case. These were the ingredients she'd written down on a whim before. She placed the entire bag of ingredients into the medicine pot and only added half of the water to boil them all over again. By the time she was done expelling the poison, these dregs would have turned to dregs. She wasn't afraid of Emperor Tianhui or Han Kongan inspecting them then. After pouring down the bowl of poison, Han Yunqi's gaze turned serious. Although this was a simple operation, there were always risks involved. This was the most crucial step, but also the most dangerous. The poison began to dissolve the fetus in Long Tianma's womb. Rather than calling it a fetus, Han Yunqi preferred to call it a thing, because that thing only had signs of life. Perhaps it didn't even have the shape of a human. Thinking this way, she felt less guilty about facing life. Han Yunqi calmly lifted Long Tianma's robes to reveal his big belly. Although he knew Han Yunqi was a doctor now, Gu Beiwei was still speechless at her nimble movements. Still, he admired her even more. This woman wasn't as bashful as other women. Her actions were impudent, but her heart was magnanimous. She did things decisively and boldly. Imperial Physician Gu, you're not allowed to speak to me before I start the operation. No matter what happens, don't disturb me. Han Yunqi's tone was very serious. It took time for the poison to dissolve that thing, and the length of time would determine when Han Yunqi would start the operation. If it was too early, there'd be no way to completely dissolve the fetus in the womb. If it was too late, the poison might start to endanger the 5 viscera and 6 bowels and create new problems, or leave behind sequelae. Han Yunqi wouldn't allow any of this, nor could she afford to take responsibility for it. After all, the 3 people outside weren't people to be trifled with. There was still Han Kongan waiting to grab hold of her pigtails. She could only succeed at this step, not fail. Although Gu Beiwei didn't understand the intricacies of this step, he knew it was crucial. Otherwise, Han Yunqi wouldn't have asked Emperor Tianhui for a second request. All right, don't be too nervous, Gu Beiwei said as he turned to leave, trying his best to minimize any disturbances. Han Yunqi's gaze rested on Long Tianma's bulging stomach, her gaze solemn and focused. She immediately activated the detox system's deep scanning function to scan the poison in Long Tianma's abdomen. She tracked the movement of the poison and calculated the progress of its dissolution based on the changes in the poison's toxicity. At this moment, Han Yunqi was completely focused, her entire being emanating a solemn aura that didn't allow anyone to disturb her or approach her. Although the detox system's deep scanning function was calculated by AI, it still required the cooperation of her consciousness. Her concentration had to reach 100%, or else it'd affect the system's calculations and affect the time it took to start the operation. Gu Beiwei watched her from a distance, his eyes filled with amazement. He liked this woman's serious looks the most. But right at this moment, Chapter 67. Just as Han Yunqi was concentrating, Han Kongan's voice suddenly came from outside the door. He was pleading with Emperor Tianhui, and his voice wasn't soft. Damn it! Gu Beiwei silently cursed, but didn't dare to open the door to stop him. He was afraid that the people outside would rush inside and affect Han Yunqi even more. Outside the room, Han Kongan had been looking forward to the post-treatment examination, but the more he thought about it, the more unsettled he felt. He couldn't just sit and wait for death. What if Han Yunqi really bribed Gu Beiwei to play some sort of trick? Then wouldn't he be finished? No matter what, he wouldn't allow it even if there was the slightest possibility. He had to go inside and watch Han Yunqi's every move with his own eyes. Your Majesty, let this commoner go in and take a look as well. After all, this commoner has served His Highness Crown Prince for so many years. I understand his body's condition better than Imperial Physician Gu. Emperor Tianhui looked at him coldly, hesitating. Your Majesty, let this commoner go in. For better or for worse, I'll be able to take care of him and see clearly how Qin Wangfei treats him. That way, it'll be safer than a post-treatment examination, won't it? Han Kongan's words were clear enough. Emperor Tianhui was still suspicious of Han Yunqi, but he nodded at these words. You can go in. Han Kongan rejoiced. Thank you, Your Majesty, this commoner will definitely see clearly. Delighted, Han Kang's voice grew louder. Gu Beiwei heard him clearly, but Han Yunqi didn't move at all. It wasn't clear whether she heard him or not. Seeing Han Kangen walk over, Gu Beiwei's heart burned with impatience. He was stuck in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. If he let Han Kangen knock on the door, he could refuse. Or he could go out and stop him. Both options would greatly affect Han Yunqi. Gu Beiwei's usually calm brows furrowed tightly. At this time, Han Yunqi also heard the commotion outside, but her ability to resist interference was not bad, so she directly ignored it. However, no one could guarantee that when Han Kangen knocked on the door later, Han Yunqi would still be able to control her attention. At the critical moment, Han Kangen was already at the door. Gu Beiwei decided to throw caution to the wind. He pressed one hand on the door and prepared to open it. Han Yunqi seemed to notice his action and instantly became distracted. She immediately tried her best to regain her senses. Beads of sweat the size of beans appeared on her forehead, and her back was already drenched. However, he couldn't concentrate. If this continued, he would make a mistake, and it would be a big mistake. What to do? Unexpectedly, at this critical moment, a cold voice rang out. Your Majesty, didn't you just promise her that no one will disturb her? This voice belonged to Qin Wang. The Duke of Qin was the Duke of Qin. Han Kangen abruptly stopped at his words. Hearing this, Gu Beiwei's heart finally settled back into his chest. His hand on the door dropped as well, while Han Yunqi exhaled in relief. Just like when she'd saved the young general, her hand had trembled as she held the needle. But as soon as she heard his voice, her heart calmed down and she felt like the entire world was safe. She narrowed her eyes and immediately entered a state of mind, forgetting everything around her. It wasn't clear what Long Feiyi had done outside, but even Gu Beiwei didn't hear a sound from the door after his words. Outside, Han Kangen's mouth was gagged. Long Feiyi was sitting on the steps by the door. Although he sat very low, his entire body emanated an air of nobility that was hard to ignore. His every movement carried an air of confidence and ease. Emperor Tianhui didn't say much because of the promise, but a complicated look flitted past his eyes. He'd been trying to figure out Long Feiyi's attitude towards this official consort all this time. He was someone who didn't care about matters that didn't concern him. Was this for the sake of the crown prince's safety, or to prevent Han Yunqi from committing a crime? Inside the room, it was still silent. Time slowed as they waited. Gradually, they heard the rumbling sounds of Long Tianma's stomach, the sound of the poison dissolving the fetus in the womb's bones. This voice grew louder and louder. Then, it gradually became softer and softer until it gradually disappeared. As the voice disappeared, the atmosphere in the room also became extremely tense. Suddenly, Han Yunqi's eyes lit up as she said in a low voice, "Prepare the lifeblood pill." Success. Gu Beiwei broke into a smile and immediately prepared the lifeblood pill to coordinate with Han Yunqi to give Long Tianma. Han Yunqi waited a bit longer until she heard the beep of the scanning system. Her taut nerves immediately relaxed. Time was up. After warming up her hands, Han Yunqi immediately began to use the knife. Her movements were practiced, nimble, and very beautiful. The sharp edge of the knife left a 2 cun gash on Long Tianma's stomach. At first, bright red blood flowed out, but as Han Yunqi began to insert needles, the blood turned black. Han Yunqi searched for acupoints while observing the amount of blood. Soon enough, the entire bed was dyed red. Her head was bowed the entire time, her expression focused and professional. Although this was her best skill, she never let her guard down. Imperial Physician Gu, use the medicine. Gu Beiwei cooperated very well. The lifeblood pill was truly a miraculous item. Long Tianma's deathly pale complexion gradually turned rosy. Han Yunqi raised her eyes to look at him before taking his pulse. Satisfied, she continued to search for acupoints. Although the process was very long, the danger had been reduced to its lowest point. Finally, half an hour later, all the toxins in Long Tianma's body had been completely removed. There was no need for any follow-up medicine. Han Yunqi used some anti-inflammatory and raw flesh adhesives before carefully bandaging the gash. Finally, she carefully tidied up Long Tianma's clothes. Finally, it was all done. Han Yunqi turned her head and exhaled a long breath of turbid air. Her mind relaxed, but what followed was exhaustion. The tiredness accumulated over the past few days, as well as the exhaustion caused by the 2 hours earlier, all exploded. However, she still persevered. She took his pulse and checked his complexion. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she sat down at the side and said indifferently, "Imperial Physician Gu, open the door." Gu Beiyue's eyes held a trace of heartache, but he didn't open the door immediately. Instead, he poured a cup of warm water for Han Yunqi to drink, then took out a few pieces of ginseng from his case and said softly, "Put them in your mouth. Rest a bit first, there's no rush." Han Yunqi took the ginseng and put it in her mouth. She knew that it was worth a fortune. If it wasn't 1,000 years old, it was at least 500 years old. A small piece was worth 1,000 gold, but he'd given her 3 large pieces at once. Perhaps she was hallucinating from her exhaustion, but when she looked at Gu Beiyue, she only felt that he was surrounded by a faint golden aura that made him seem like a gentle angel. Seeing that Han Yunqi's face was better, Gu Beiyue went to open the door. Emperor Tianhui and the rest were all waiting anxiously in the courtyard. As soon as the door opened, the Empress was the first to rush over. "How is the Crown Prince?" Gu Beiyue smiled as he replied, "Congratulations to your Majesty, Empress Dowager, and esteemed Empress. The treatment was very successful. His Highness Crown Prince is fine now." "Really?" Emperor Tianhui shot up from his seat, nearly losing his balance and falling down. The movement completely exposed his nervousness. The Empress Dowager stood up as well, overjoyed at the turn of events. "Really? Really?" The treatment went very smoothly. The malignant tumor in His Highness's abdomen has already been dissolved. All of the poison has been expelled. Gu Beiyue replied honestly, Quick, go in and take a look." The Empress was so happy that she was the first to walk inside. Seeing her so anxious, Gu Beiyue quickly coaxed her. "Esteemed Empress, slow down. Be careful not to fall." "I can't slow down. It's been so many years. I've dreamed of this day even in my dreams. I just knew that Tianma would be fine." "Emperor, I already said that Han Kongan must have misdiagnosed him. How could Tianma have contracted such a strange illness?" the Empress Dowager said in pleasant surprise. The 2 women were so happy that they forgot their status. They spoke as they rushed inside. Emperor Tianhui couldn't care less as he strode into the room. Only Han Kongan was left gaping as he fell to the ground. Perhaps he was too shocked, but his mouth hung open so wide that the rag he'd used to gag it fell out of his mouth. The only one who remained calm was Long Feiyi. He glanced at Gu Beiyue, who was still standing by the door, before turning to leave. Inside the room, the pungent smell of blood permeated the air. It smelled like rotten sewage. Han Yunqi's things were more or less cleaned up, leaving behind only the medicine pot and the blood-stained bedsheets. Long Tianma lay quietly on the bed. His swollen abdomen had mostly disappeared, leaving behind only a ring of flab due to his loose skin. It couldn't be seen with the white gauze wrapped around it. It had to be said that the smell of blood in the room was very unpleasant, but everyone was so happy that they couldn't care less about it. She was his mother, after all, so the Empress ignored the blood-stained bed and sat down on it. She touched her son's face and was so moved that she was choked with sobs. "Is he really cured? Really?" The Empress Dowager stared at his stomach in disbelief. Good. That's too good." It was Emperor Tianhui who took care of his status and remained calm. "Han Yunqi, does this count as the Crown Prince recovering?" "To reply, Your Majesty, it's as Imperial Physician Gu said. The poison tumor in the Crown Prince's stomach has already been removed and expelled. Once the anesthetic wears off, the Crown Prince will wake up. I left behind 3 types of medicine that he can change every night. His wounds should be completely healed," Han Yunqi replied seriously. "Then how long will it take for him to wake up?" Emperor Tianhui asked next. Now the Empress Dowager and Empress were both looking over from their joy. Han Yunqi naturally knew what Emperor Tianhui meant. She couldn't leave until the Crown Prince woke up. "About 2 hours, she replied honestly. "Qin Wangfei, you should stay in the side chamber and rest first to avoid any more trouble," Emperor Tianhui said mildly. He wasn't asking for Han Yunqi's opinion, but ordering her around. Still, he didn't call her by her full name. The fact that he called her Qin Wangfei showed that his attitude towards her had changed. Han Yunqi really wanted to rest. She gave Gu Beiwei a meaningful look and was about to leave with the court lady when Han Konggen's voice carried in from outside. Qin Wangfei, hold on. Soon enough, Han Konggen entered the room, his goatee slightly raised. His face was solemn as he bowed with hands clasped in front. Your Majesty, as this commoner sees it, it's still too early to make a conclusion about His Highness Crown Prince's illness. Actually, His Highness Crown Prince's stomach was already gone. As long as he could wake up, there was no need to find out what was in his stomach now. Even if it really was a child, Emperor Tianhui would never allow news of it to spread. However, for Han Konggen, the appraisal was necessary. It was related to his reputation and even more so, his life. Of course, Emperor Tianhui wanted to know the truth without any outsiders around. Emperor Tianhui waved a hand, indicating for the court lady to withdraw first. Chapter 68. Although Han Konggen was eager to try, Emperor Tianhui didn't allow him to examine immediately. Instead, he asked, Imperial Physician Gu, have you examined the blood? Is there really poison in it? Gu Beiwei was a gentle fox. He was very modest. Your Majesty, you know that this official isn't an expert in poisons. How about we let Divine Dr. Han take a look? As he spoke, he added, of course, just to be on the safe side, we can invite a professional poison doctor to examine the blood as well? Han Konggen firmly believed in his diagnosis and was still full of confidence. Imperial Physician Gu is right. We really should invite a professional poison doctor to examine the blood. So speaking, he looked towards Han Yunqi. Qin Wangfei, don't you think so? Han Yunqi nodded, a mocking smile on her lips. She didn't bat an eyelid. Someone come. Find 3 poison doctors, immediately. Emperor Tianhui ordered coldly. The Empress Dowager and Empress understood the situation as well. They exchanged glances without speaking. Actually, if this blood wasn't poison but the blood of a fetus, then Han Yunqi and Han Konggen wouldn't have an easy time no matter who was right or wrong. After all, would the Crown Prince still need a doctor when he'd already recovered? Han Konggen might be a famous doctor, but he was still a commoner. Han Yunqi might be Qin Wangfei, but that was only an empty title. Han Konggen had been so anxious to prove his diagnosis that he'd forgotten the most important point. Soon enough, the 3 poison doctors entered. Emperor Tianhui ordered them to examine the blood on the bed at the same time before reporting the results. Everyone in the room had their own thoughts as they watched the 3 poison doctors take the blood for examination. Han Konggen's gaze swept over Han Yunqi's medical pouch and Imperial Physician Gu's case, a look of understanding on his face as if he'd really discovered something. Han Yunqi seemed exhausted as she silently sat down on one side. All right, tired as she was still looking forward to the results. Soon enough, the 3 poison doctors came to a conclusion. To reply, Your Majesty, the blood really is poisonous. It's not a small poison either, but a highly toxic one. But this official is ignorant and doesn't know what kind of poison caused it, the poison doctor reported. As soon as he said this, Han Konggen, who was full of confidence, was shocked. He said angrily, Impossible. Emperor Tianhui gave him a cold look before Han Konggen calmed down. Suppressing his shock and anger, he said respectfully, Your Majesty, even if the blood is poisonous, there's no way to ascertain whether it was poisoned when it was in His Highness's stomach or after it flowed out. Divine Dr. Han, what do you mean by that? Gu Beiwei, who had always been calm, asked coldly. Of course, Han Konggen suspected Gu Beiwei, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Your Majesty, without sufficient evidence, it's impossible to convince others, let alone determine the truth. Han Konggen reminded. If you want to poison him, then you must have an antidote. Gu Beiwei said. Emperor Tianhui trusted Gu Beiwei more or less, so he nodded his head. His gaze rested on the nearby pot of decocting medicine. Gu Beiwei was very indifferent. Your Majesty, that medicine was brewed by this humble subject. It's not poisonous. But since the poison doctor's here, there's no harm in examining it again. Han Yunqi had long taken care of these things, So how could they give themselves away? Emperor Tianhui was very cautious as he nodded his head. The poison doctor went to examine it again. Soon enough, he came to a conclusion. Your Majesty, these are medicinal ingredients that aren't poisonous. There's a wide variety of them, but this official isn't familiar with common medicinal ingredients, so I can't determine the specific ingredients. Hearing this, Han Kang's face turned 3 shades paler, while Emperor Tianhui more or less had an idea of what was going on. Han Kangan, you're proficient in medicinal ingredients. Why don't you take a look at what kind of ingredients they are? Emperor Tianhui said, his tone cold. Han Kangan refused to believe it. He wanted to ferret out Han Yunqi's little tale. Yes. Thus, Han Kangan poured out all the ingredients from the pot and analyzed them one by one. He wrote down all the ingredients he found and turned them into a prescription. Han Yunqi watched him coldly from beginning to end. She really didn't know why her mother had married a man like this in the first place. How did she take a liking to him? After a long while, Han Kangan finally finished analyzing all the dregs of the ingredients and turned them into a complete prescription. As long as this prescription was different from the previous one, it was enough to prove that Han Yunqi had tampered with it. The prescription was handed over to Emperor Tianhui at the same time Gu Beiyue took out the original one for Emperor Tianhui to compare. For a moment, silence filled the room as everyone waited anxiously for the results. It wasn't clear whether he was affected by the atmosphere, but Han Kangan grew nervous as well. His hands were clasped behind his back, his fingers intertwined. Finally, Emperor Tianhui raised his head to look at Han Kangan. For a moment, everyone's heart skipped a beat. What was the result of the comparison? Slap. Suddenly, Emperor Tianhui slammed the table and threw the 2 prescriptions at Han Kangan's face. What a divine Dr. Han! Take a look for yourself, he cried angrily. Han Kangan's face turned white as he picked up the prescription to compare. He discovered that the 2 prescriptions were actually identical. Heavens, how could this be? No. Han Kangan shook his head. Your Majesty, it can't be. It must have been Han Yunqi who poisoned the child. There has to be dregs of the poison left behind. She must have hidden them. Luckily, he'd guessed correctly. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Han Kangan, what nonsense are you spouting? The Empress on one side finally lost her temper. The truth was right before their eyes. There was no child in the Crown Prince's stomach. It was a malignant tumor, but Han Kangan still dared to slander the Crown Prince. Esteemed Empress, Han Yunqi must have used poison. There has to be dregs of the poison left behind. You have to believe me. Han Kangan was on the verge of collapse. He suddenly rushed towards Gu Beiyue's clinic and opened it up to search frantically. But there wasn't even any poison left, much less dregs. Seeing this, Han Yunqi generously tossed her own medical pouch over. Divine Dr. Han, take a look at mine as well. Han Kangan took it and rummaged through it until he poured out everything from Han Yunqi's pouch. In a flash, all sorts of acupuncture needles and white gauze littered the ground. Aside from that, there wasn't even any medicine. Now it wasn't just Han Kangan. Emperor Tianhui, the Empress Dowager, and the Empress were all convinced that Han Yunqi was right. They all believed that the Crown Prince's stomach was a malignant tumor. Han Kangan's hands turned to jelly as he let go of Han Yunqi's medical pouch. His mind buzzed as if something had hit it hard in the head, causing him to feel dizzy. His legs turned to jelly as well. It's impossible. How could it be? There really wasn't any poison. Han Yunqi's diagnosis was right, but he couldn't have made a mistake. That was a child. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. I don't believe it. As Han Kangan spoke, his legs turned to jelly as he fell to the ground. The ironclad truth was right in front of his eyes. For a moment, he didn't know how to explain himself. If he was wrong, were the directors of Cloud Realm Medical Academy wrong as well? This completely overturned his 3 views, but he had no way to refute them. He whipped his head towards Han Yunqi and saw Han Yunqi smiling. Suddenly angry, he shouted, Han Yunqi, tell me why. The Crown Prince is clearly pregnant. He's clearly pregnant. Perhaps he could have said these words before, but now that Emperor Tianhui had completely trusted Han Yunqi, saying them again was seeking death. What did it mean to cause trouble with the tongue? This was exactly what it meant to cause trouble with the tongue. Emperor Tianhui was already angry, but the words only made him even angrier. He was about to lose his temper when the Empress lost her temper and scolded, "Shameful thing. Deceiving the world to gain fame and misdiagnosing someone wrongly. You still dare to quibble with irrefutable evidence? How could you diagnose a man giving birth? Hong Kongan, if I don't kill you today, I'll be letting down all the grievances my MO suffered over the past few years." Only then did the crazed Hong Kongan calm down. He couldn't refute a single word, and as soon as he heard the word die, his mind grew even more blank. He didn't know what to do. Emperor Tianhui's cold eyes flashed with killing intent as he kicked the man. "Hong Kongan, you still don't know your wrongs at a time like this. You still dare to slander the crown prince. You really have guts to the heavens. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Someone come. Take this swindler to the imperial prisons to await trial. Jin wants to exterminate his 3 clans." Exterminate his 3 clans? Hong Kongan's misdiagnosis of the illness had humiliated the crown prince and affected the imperial family's reputation. Just this crime alone was enough to exterminate his 3 clans. Moreover, this strange illness had dragged on for so many years, wasting so much of the crown prince's youth. Exterminating his 3 clans was letting Hong Kongan off easy, but these 3 words were like 5 bolts of lightning to him. Han Yunshi, who'd been watching idly from the sidelines, suddenly stiffened as she sat up straight. Hong Kongan gave a start before he howled, "Your Majesty, this commoner was wrong. This commoner knows his wrongs. Your Majesty, have mercy. Your Majesty, for the sake of Yunshi saving the crown prince, spare this commoner and the Han family. Your Majesty, have mercy. Esteemed Empress Dowager, esteemed Empress, for the sake of this commoner's many years of hard work, please spare this commoner this once." Hong Kongan kowtowed with all his might, begging with all his might as he cried to the heavens and the earth. Unfortunately, the retainers quickly came to detain him. Emperor Tianhui's cold face was terrifyingly furious, showing no mercy whatsoever. At this moment, Hong Kongan finally remembered that Han Yunshi was still his daughter. He threw himself at Han Yunshi's feet and cried out, "Yunshi, daughter, you're indebted to the crown prince. Save your father, save the Han clan's 3 clans." Han Yunshi's eyes narrowed, a complicated look on her face. Although Hong Kongan's diagnosis wasn't wrong and his conservative treatment was correct, Han Yunshi wasn't planning to help him. Leaving aside the young general's matter, Han Yunshi had no reason to save him as a father and even stabbed her in the back. All the suffering she'd suffered since she was a child were enough to prove that Han Yunshi had no reason to save him. In her eyes, Hong Kongan deserved it. But this matter involved the Han clan's 3 clans. Wiping out 3 clans meant wiping out the father's, mother's, and wife's clans. There were at least 100 people in total. Moreover, she and her mother's clansmen were implicated as well. What did Emperor Tianhui mean by this? Han Yunshi ignored Hong Kongan and hesitated before looking towards Emperor Tianhui. She was about to speak when Emperor Tianhui spoke first. "You've rendered meritorious service by saving Tianma, so Jin won't implicate you. But Hong Kongan's crimes cannot be forgiven. The Han clan must pay the price." Han Yunshi rose to pay her respects, but still opened her mouth to speak. "May your Majesty please reconsider. Although the Han clan's various wives and concubines, as well as her brothers and sisters, had all abused her, their crimes didn't warrant death. Moreover, there were still many innocent people in the Han clan's 3 clans. Although this matter started because of Hong Kongan, she couldn't get away from it. She wasn't a saint, but she didn't want to be an executioner. She didn't want to be a great sinner of the Han clan. Chapter 69. Your Majesty, Yunshi doesn't dare to take credit. I only ask that your Majesty spare the Han clan's 3 generations. Han Yunshi said, immediately kneeling down. Your Majesty, Hong Kongan's diagnosis of a strange illness has always been kept secret. Yunshi believes that besides Hong Kongan, no one else in the Han clan's 3 generations knows of the specifics, nor would anyone dare to criticize the crown prince. Yunshi is willing to make up for my faults by meritorious service. I ask that your majesty spare the innocent and show mercy." Hearing this, the flustered Hong Kongan finally calmed down and followed suit. "Your majesty, this commoner guarantees with my life that I've never revealed the crown prince's illness to anyone. I ask that your majesty spare this commoner this once for the sake of my wife and Yunshi's face." Emperor Tianhui's expression was ugly, but he didn't speak for a long time. The Empress Dowager watched in silence, but her heart was laughing coldly. Compared to Lady Tianxin, Hong Kongan's decisiveness was far inferior. Now compared to his daughter, he was even worse. Han Yunshi was pleading for mercy for the Han clan's 3 generations, but Hong Kongan was pleading for himself. "Muhu, you can't spare them. Otherwise, Imo, or will suffer too much," the Empress murmured, wishing she could kill Hong Kongan right then and there. In the Imperial clan, a single person could change the entire situation, just like how Lady Tianxin had saved the Empress Dowager. If it hadn't been for the past few years, the Crown Prince would have gained a firm foothold in court long ago. None of the other princes would have been able to develop their own power. But the Empress Dowager glanced at Han Yunshi, her eyes calculating. "Your Majesty, Yunshi's heart is just like Lady Tianxin's. She has a bodhisattva's heart, so just go along with her." Han Yunshi didn't expect the Empress Dowager to help her instead of kicking her when she was down. She found it strange that the Empress Dowager wouldn't treat her sincerely even if she saved the Crown Prince. But she didn't have time to think so much. Emperor Tianhui glanced at the Empress Dowager, then at Han Yunshi. Only then did he relent. "All right, Zhen will give you and your mother face today and spare the Han clan's 3 generations." Hong Kongan rejoiced at his words and quickly kowtowed in thanks. But Emperor Tianhui angrily kicked him aside with a cold voice. "I can spare the Han clan's 3 generations, but Zhen definitely won't spare a piece of trash like you." Hong Kongan was kicked to the side. He was dumbfounded. He suddenly felt that all the strength in his body had been sucked out. He was paralyzed. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Han Yunshi's voice was loud and clear. Her words were sonorous. She only wanted to save the 3 generations of the Han family, not Hong Kongan. She was very satisfied with this result. "Someone come, hurry and escort Hong Kongan to the imperial prisons." He. Jin wants him paraded through the streets and beheaded at noon. Emperor Tianhui said coldly. "No, Your Majesty, Yunshi. No, save me, Yunshi." Hong Kongan shouted, but he was quickly escorted out by the attendants. His shouts grew further and further away until they disappeared. Han Yunshi mulled over Emperor Tianhui's words. It looked like he was planning to use this chance to tell the world about the Crown Prince's illness and clarify things. After all, it was easy for people to let their imaginations run wild and affect the Crown Prince's image. If it was poison, then it was very normal. But this way, the Han family, a medical family, would definitely have a bad reputation. In the future, it'd be hard for them to gain a foothold in the medical world. For the Han clan, who made a living out of medicine, this was undoubtedly an enormous disaster. Leaving aside the enmity between them, it really was a pity to ruin the Han family's century-old reputation. Still, Han Yunshi knew that Emperor Tianhui's concession was already the best result. After Hong Kongan was escorted away, Emperor Tianhui's anger subsided considerably. He approached the bed and carefully examined his son's face before asking, "Han Yunshi, there's still 2 more hours before she wakes up, right?" "Yes." Han Yunshi was very certain. "Someone come, take Qin Wangfei away to rest," Emperor Tianhui said mildly as he looked at the Crown Prince, his dark eyes rekindling with the flames of hope. "Thanks to Your Majesty." Han Yunshi tidied up her medical pouch before following a court lady to a side room. She was truly exhausted and didn't have the energy to think about Hong Kongan for now. It was only 2 hours. She didn't lie on the bed, afraid that she wouldn't be able to get up if she fell asleep. Instead, she reclined on the bed and propped up her head with one hand. She was planning to close her eyes for a nap, but as soon as she closed them, she really did fall asleep. In the silent room, Long Fei Ye's footsteps were very light, as if he'd slowed down on purpose. He walked in front of Han Yunshi and looked down disdainfully at her from above. He assumed that she'd wake up, But this woman slept so deeply that she didn't even have any defenses in an unfamiliar environment. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with displeasure before he sat down by Han Yunqi's side. Still, Han Yunqi didn't notice him even after he sat down. Her sleeping face was peaceful and beautiful, lacking some of her usual stubbornness in favor of the delicate bearing of a young girl. This was the first time Long Fei Yi had seen her so closely, and the first time he'd looked at her so seriously. His innately cold gaze gradually turned domineering, as if he'd locked onto his prey. He impudently examined every part of her dainty beauty. In the silence, Long Fei Yi impudently reached out a hand and lightly pressed his finger against her lips. In a low voice, he said, "Han Yunqi, just who are you?" He'd investigated her for a long time, but couldn't find any flaws in her. Still, he didn't believe that this woman was the same cowardly, useless, and ugly woman from before. If she'd insisted on marrying into the Duke of Qin's household, then she wouldn't have needed to pretend in the first place. She wouldn't have needed to suffer grievances in the Han family. But what confirmed his suspicions was that he'd seen everything clearly from the roof of the Crown Prince's sleeping quarters. This woman's back was facing Gu Beiwei, but she'd magically made all the poisons in the medicine pot disappear, making it impossible for Han Kongan to find them. Could this count as one of her miraculous poison skills? Leaving aside the Han family, even Cloud Realm Medical Academy might not have such skills, right? Heaven knows how tired Han Yunqi was to sleep so soundly. It wasn't until Long Fei Ye's finger increased the pressure that she abruptly woke up. As soon as she opened her eyes, she bumped into Long Fei Ye's cold, misty eyes. This is... Han Yunqi lowered her gaze and immediately saw his finger pressing against her lips. This action was so ambiguous. In a daze, Han Yunqi's eyes widened. She couldn't be dreaming, right? Otherwise, how could Long Fei Yi tease her like this in her sleep? Thinking up to here, Han Yunqi suddenly grew alarmed and shoved Long Fei Ye's hand away. Damn! Had she become stupid from sleeping? This was teasing while eating fruit, alright? Long Fei Yi, what are you doing? Han Yunqi said angrily as she backed away and curled up into a defensive ball. Long Fei Yi didn't plan to explain his actions, but lazily leaned back on the other side of the bed. He arched a brow as he sized her up. Han Yunqi, you've got guts. You actually poisoned the Crown Prince? Han Yunqi was alarmed. This guy actually knew? What are you talking about? I don't understand what you mean. Of course she had to play dumb. Your lordship saw everything. You changed the poison in the medicine pot, Long Fei Yi said again. Han Yunqi was even more alarmed. This guy actually peeked. Could it be that he also saw her hiding the poison in the detoxification system? Although she was very uneasy, Han Yunqi quickly calmed down. Even if she was exposed on the spot, she would still defend herself. Not to mention that she wasn't exposed on the spot, so she wouldn't admit it even if she died. I don't know how your highness saw it. You must have seen wrongly. She calmly said and then reminded him, Your Highness, you can't speak carelessly. Poisoning is a serious crime. If His Majesty blames you, you and I won't be able to shoulder it. Han Yunqi had a relaxed expression, but Long Fei Yi was even more relaxed than her. He calmly said, Your lordship can shoulder it. A trace of gloominess flashed through Han Yunqi's eyes, but she still patiently said, Your Highness, you need evidence to say this. When Chunxia treated the Crown Prince, Imperial Physician Gu was present the entire time. Imperial Physician Gu can prove that your words are false. Who would have thought that once these words came out, Long Fei Yi would suddenly lean over and close in on her? Han Yunqi did not expect this and suddenly leaned back. If it wasn't for the back of the couch being high enough, she would have already fallen down. She blocked his chest with one hand and angrily glared at him. What was this fellow doing? Couldn't he speak properly? Why would Gu Beiwei help you? Gu Beiwei knows too much. Long Fei Yi said with a cold smile, Your Highness, Imperial Physician Gu was ordered to help Chunxia, so he naturally has to help Chunxia. Han Yunqi played dumb as she seriously replied, You know what this prince is talking about. What's going on with the Crown Prince's illness? Long Fei Yi also became serious. Your Highness, Chunxia has already explained the Crown Prince's illness very clearly. Han Yunqi's mouth was especially tight. Long Fei's patience finally ran out, and he coldly said, Han Yunqi, do you think His Majesty will believe you and Gu Beiwe, or this prince? This. Han Yunqi was speechless. Only now did she realize that this giant iceberg actually had a rogue side to him. She pursed her lips and said in displeasure, can't you speak properly? Move aside. Being yelled at like this, Long Fei was a bit stunned. He actually also moved back, leisurely and indolent as usual. However, his scrutinizing gaze did not leave Han Yunqi, insisting that she explain herself. Han Yunqi had no choice but to tell him the truth about the fetus in the womb's condition. Long Fei listened attentively, but in the end, his brows slightly furrowed in disbelief. When Han Yunqi saw his expression, she sighed with emotion in her heart. This guy was really different from normal people. Even Gu Beiwe was shocked when he heard this, but he was just curious. After explaining herself clearly, Han Yunqi did not say anything else. She lazily leaned back on the high pillow and looked at him. What did he want to do after asking clearly? But all Long Fei said was, this matter ends here. Don't ever tell anyone else. After saying this, he got off the bed and left. That's it? He specially came to interrogate her just to find out the truth? Han Yunqi was a bit astonished. She had already prepared herself to be threatened. Did he see her take something out of the detoxification system or not? She was suspicious, but she did not receive a reply. Han Yunqi thought that since he didn't ask, he probably didn't see it. Fine, I can't figure this guy out. After being disturbed by Long Fei, Han Yunqi was no longer sleepy despite her exhaustion. She was too lazy to move, but nestled on the bed to think things over. Soon enough, an excited eunuch knocked on the door. Esteemed Wang Fei. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Crown Prince is awake. He's awake. He woke up earlier than Han Yunqi had predicted. Han Yunqi rejoiced and immediately felt invigorated. She hurried to the Crown Prince's rooms. Inside, everything was as before. Emperor Tianhui, the Empress Dowager, and Empress were all gathered around the bed. Emperor Tianhui had summoned many imperial physicians to take Long Tianma's pulse one by one. Long Tianma was still lying in his original position, but his eyes were wide open. His dark pupils were filled with indescribable joy. Even though he was still a patient, he was full of vitality. If not for the fact that his imperial mother and imperial grandmother disliked her, Han Yunqi would have liked such strong patience. Chapter 70. As soon as he saw Han Yunqi walk over, Emperor Tianhui's attitude changed completely. Yunqi, come. Hurry and take Tianma's pulse. The imperial physicians all said it's normal, so you should take a look. Heaven knows how happy Emperor Tianhui was with the Crown Prince's lucidity. From Han Yunqi to Qin Wang Fei, then to Yunqi, Han Yunqi was very comfortable to hear. She knew her efforts hadn't been in vain. No matter what Emperor Tianhui thought of her in his heart, he'd at least given her the respect she deserved and recognition of her status. As she walked over, the Empress Dowager and Empress hastily stepped aside with pleasant expressions. Even Long Tianma, who disdained her before, had a look of gratitude on his face. Imperial Qin Aunt, it's been hard on you. Han Yunqi put on a false smile as she sat down to take Tianma's pulse. Now the entire room grew quiet, so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard clearly. Although there were no more problems, Han Yunqi's personal appearance still made everyone nervous. Only Gu Beiwe looked at Han Yunqi's fake seriousness and couldn't help but curve his lips into a warm smile. This woman, even when she's pretending to be serious, she's still so beautiful. After pretending to be serious for a while, Han Yunqi finally spoke up. It's fine. He'll recuperate for a few days and change his dressing on time. Once the wound heals, he can get off the bed. Since he's taken the lifeblood pill, he doesn't need to take any supplements, so it's fine. Emperor Tianhui nodded. Imperial physician Gu, I'll leave it all to you. Yes. Gu Beiwe replied in a low voice. Han Yunqi rose to her feet, silently exhaling in relief. She'd finally taken care of this thorny problem. The string in her head that had been stretched taut all these days could finally relax. Although Han Yunqi had pleaded for leniency on behalf of the 3 Han clan members in the past, Emperor Tianhui still wanted to reward Han Yunqi. He gave the eunuchs a pile of things that Han Yunqi couldn't remember, so she could only express her thanks. Emperor Tianhui wanted to spend more time with the crown prince, but he had urgent matters to attend to and could only leave first. Before he left, he even told Han Yunqi to visit the palace more often to accompany the Empress Dowager. Han Yunqi agreed with a brilliant smile, but in the end, her heart still felt uneasy. The Empress Dowager and Grand Concubine Yi were sworn enemies, so how could Emperor Tianhui not know? Moreover, his relationship with Long Fei Yi was even more delicate. It was better for her to stay out of the affairs of the palace. From the incident where her mother saved the Empress Dowager, she had long understood a principle. The members of the imperial family would never be truly grateful, or rather, they would never be soft-hearted and give up their interests because of gratitude, even if you save their most precious life. In this case, Han Yunqi only treated it as solving a problem for herself. Imperial Qin Aunt, when I've recovered, I'll definitely pay a personal visit to express my thanks. Long Tianma was still immersed in his joy and seemed quite sincere. Han Yunqi smiled. It's only a small matter. No need to keep it in mind. Crown Prince should rest well. If you feel unwell, you must tell Imperial Physician Gu. After giving instructions, Han Yunqi left with the Empress Dowager and Empress Dowager. She was about to bid farewell when the Empress Dowager grabbed her hand, as intimate as if they'd met for the first time. Yunqi, don't go back yet. Come to my place for dinner. You've worked yourself to the bone these past few days, so I must reward you well. Hee, Yunqi, the old ancestor has never asked anyone to stay for dinner. You're so lucky, the Empress said with a smile. Heaven knows if these words were true or false, but Han Yunqi had been forced to a dead end by them. If she refused, she wouldn't be giving the Empress Dowager any face. Then Chen Xie will accept deferentially rather than decline courteously. Han Yunqi looked happy on the surface, but her heart was filled with bitterness. She only wanted to go back and soak in a good bath and sleep. All right? She just knew that the Empress Dowager wouldn't help her with anything good. Heaven knows what the Empress Dowager was planning this time. The Empress Dowager walked in the middle with Han Yunqi and the Empress supporting her on either side as they headed for her quarters. Han Yunqi remained silent, unconsciously thinking of Long Fei Yi. Where was that fellow now? Had he left the palace, or was he at Emperor Tianhui's place? Could he come and take her home instead? Reality proved that Han Yunqi was overthinking things. By the time they reached the Empress Dowager's quarters, the banquet had already been prepared. There was fine wine and delicacies, a sumptuous spread. Han Yunqi, who hadn't eaten hot food in days, couldn't help but swallow her saliva at the sight. After sitting down and exchanging a few pleasantries, Han Yunqi saw the Empress Dowager and Empress pick up their chopsticks and happily began to gorge herself. Yunqi, there's no need to be polite. Just treat it as eating at home. I'm different from your Mu Fei. There aren't so many rules at the table. The Empress Dowager wanted to help Han Yunqi pick up some food, but Han Yunqi picked up quite a bit herself. She didn't seem to hear the Empress Dowager's words as she buried her head in the food. Han Yunqi didn't feel awkward, but the Empress Dowager and Empress exchanged glances, feeling awkward instead. Look, you must be starving. Eat more, eat more. The Empress hastened to speak up, giving the Empress Dowager a way out. Han Yunqi was listening, but her first words were comparing Grand Concubine Yi. What was the Empress Dowager thinking? She didn't speak. The world was vast, but her stomach was the most important. She'd fill up her stomach first before discussing anything else. The Empress Dowager drank a few mouthfuls of soup before speaking again. Yunqi, back then your mother, esteemed Empress Dowager, which chef made this soup? It's so delicious, Han Yunqi interrupted with a smile. The head chef of the Imperial Kitchens personally made it for me. If you like it, you can come over often. I guarantee you'll drink your fill, the Empress Dowager said with a chuckle. Chen Xie doesn't dare, Han Yunqi said. Why don't you dare? You don't even know, but before we were betrothed, I almost took you as esteemed Empress Dowager. This dish is delicious too. Was it made by the head chef as well? Han Yunqi interrupted again. Finally, the Empress Dowager nodded with a false smile and didn't speak again. As a result, Han Yunqi ate her meal very smoothly and satisfactorily. After all, it was easier to discuss matters after eating and drinking. After rinsing her mouth and changing the tea table, the Empress Dowager finally had a chance to speak. She didn't expect the Empress Dowager to continue her unfinished words. Yunqi, before we were betrothed, I almost took you as my adopted daughter. Your mother agreed as well. Hearing this, Han Yunqi's hand stiffened. What was the Empress Dowager's goal in saying all this now? She didn't speak, but continued to wait in silence. The Empress Dowager paused, then smiled. Yunqi, are you still willing to be my adopted daughter? Han Yunqi's mouth twitched. Esteemed Empress Dowager, thanks to you, Yunqi married the Duke of Qin. Yunqi boldly says I've long considered esteemed Empress Dowager a family member. In some ways, Han Yunqi counted as the Empress Dowager's daughter-in-law as well. Since the Empress Dowager wanted to take her as her adopted daughter, the intelligent Han Yunqi immediately smelled the scent of roping her in. Hee, a daughter-in-law isn't as close as a daughter, the Empress Dowager joked as she tugged on Han Yunqi's hand. Han Yunqi glanced at the Empress out of the corner of her eye. As expected, her daughter-in-law's expression immediately turned ugly. Of course, the Empress Dowager's words weren't directed at the Empress, but Grand Concubine Yi. Han Yunqi was Grand Concubine Yi's daughter-in-law, but now the Empress Dowager wanted to take her as her daughter. This was a blatant attempt to bribe her to deal with Grand Concubine Yi. Han Yunqi finally understood why the Empress Dowager had betrothed her benefactor's daughter to the enemy's son before she was born. As it turned out, she was planning to use her as a spy, but she never expected her to grow up to be an ugly, useless, good-for-nothing girl. Leaving aside the fact that Han Yunqi didn't want to be a spy, even if she did, she'd never do it by Long Fei Ye's side. In the end, the struggle between the Empress Dowager and Grand Concubine Yi was still a struggle between the Emperor and Long Fei Yi. Having her go undercover by Long Fei Ye's side was the same as seeking death. Although the Empress Dowager's words were vague, a smart person could understand what she meant. Seeing Han Yunqi hesitate, the Empress Dowager signaled the Empress with her eyes, who spoke up. Yunqi, the Empress Dowager doesn't have a daughter. She's always wanted one and said she's an adopted daughter, but she'll treat you as her own. If someone dares to bully you in the future, forget about the Empress Dowager and me. Even the Emperor won't let it go. TSK, TSK, TSK. Han Yunqi sighed with emotion in her heart. What a great temptation. Was she telling her that as long as she nodded, even the Emperor could be her backer? Looking at the Empress's gentle smile and the Empress Dowager's expectant face, Han Yunqi really wanted to tell them that spies had always been killed as soon as they were used. Backers and whatnot were all empty promises. Han Yunqi quietly finished her tea and smiled. Of course a daughter is closer than a daughter. That's true, that's true. The Empress even nodded. In the end, a daughter-in-law is an outsider, Han Yunqi said again. The Empress thought she'd agreed and nodded immediately. A daughter-in-law isn't close, Han Yunqi said again. Finally, the Empress sensed that something was off. She was a daughter-in-law and her mother-in-law was right by her side. Her eyes flashed with displeasure, but she kept holding it in. She didn't nod anymore. The Empress Dowager was delighted to hear this. She'd said before that as long as Han Yunqi could cure the crown prince, she'd let bygones be bygones. Then she'd follow the plan from many years ago and plant Han Yunqi in the Duke of Qin's estate as a spy. She thought Han Yunqi would take some time to consider, but she actually approved of her words. Yunqi, it's good that you understand. How about we just... Before the Empress Dowager could finish, Han Yunqi stood up and bowed. It's Yunqi's good fortune to receive esteemed Empress Dowager's favor. Yunqi thanks esteemed Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager was very satisfied and reached out to support her. Silly girl, if your mother hadn't passed away early and caused some misunderstandings between us, you wouldn't have had to suffer so much. With my support, Grand Concubine Yi wouldn't dare to make things difficult for you. Han Yunqi smiled faintly, looking helpless but mocking. Esteemed Empress Dowager, mother might have passed away, but Yunqi is still a married woman. A married woman follows her husband, so Yunqi can't make the decision to accept a foster daughter. Why don't esteemed Empress Dowager ask the Duke of Qin? What? Both the Empress Dowager and Empress were stunned by her words, their expressions changing. A sinister look flashed past the Empress Dowager's eyes as she almost exploded. Han Yunqi, Han Yunqi, after all that talk, you're still playing with me. She clearly knew that this matter was aimed at Grand Concubine Yi and the Duke of Qin, but she dared to ask the Duke of Qin for a discussion. Very good. What a married woman follows her husband. Her rejection was so thorough and wonderful. Neither she nor the Empress could get angry or blame her. If she knew earlier, she wouldn't have asked for leniency for the Han clan's 3 generations. The hands hidden in her wide sleeves clenched into fists as she suppressed her anger. The Empress Dowager couldn't find a way out of this embarrassing situation. If news of this reached the Duke of Qin and Grand Concubine Yi's ears, they'd not only become a laughingstock, but also take precautions. The Empress was indignant as well. Aya, the Duke of Qin would have forgotten about this if you didn't mention it. Muhu, you like Yunqi, but she's still part of the Duke of Qin's estate. You know Grand Concubine Yi and the Duke of Qin's tempers. If they find out about this, we won't be able to do anything. Chapter 71. The Empress had given her a way out, so the Empress Dowager naturally followed along. See, I was so happy today that I forgot about these troublesome matters. Han Yunqi smiled coldly in her heart and didn't speak. She let the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law sing along and act out their own play. Muhu, I think there's no need to recognize her as a goddaughter. We're all one family, so as long as you dote on Yunqi and have her come often, it's all the same, the Empress said easily, as if it really wasn't a big deal. The Empress Dowager nodded. Fine, fine. Yunqi, what do you think? Esteemed Empress Dowager will decide everything. The Duke of Qin is busy every day, so Qinxia won't disturb him. Han Yunqi naturally had to express her stance. Even if she didn't rely on the Empress Dowager, she couldn't offend her to death, right? With Han Yunqi's words, the Empress Dowager forced out a smile. Hee, you really are a sensible child. Since they couldn't reach an agreement, Han Yunqi couldn't stay any longer. After exchanging some pleasantries, she stood up and bid farewell. As soon as she left, the Empress Dowager's old face fell as she swept Han Yunqi's teacup to the ground. Thing that doesn't know what's good for her. Muho, don't be angry. It's not worth it to get pregnant from anger. Qinxia said long ago that this girl isn't simple. In the future, we have to be careful. The Empress hurriedly soothed the Empress Dowager's anger as she coaxed her. Heh, a damned girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I was praising her, but she dared to refuse. Just wait, there'll be a day when I'll make her regret it. I don't believe she'll have an easy time in the Duke of Qin's estate. She got lucky this time. Next time, she better not fall into my hands again. The Empress Dowager was truly angry. She never thought that Han Yunqi would refuse and couldn't calm down for a long time. Han Yunqi only treated this as a joke. After leaving the palace, she finally let out a sigh of relief. When she passed by the Han estate, she stopped to look for a long time. Although the Han family wasn't a noble family in the capital, they were still a reputable aristocratic family. At this moment, the vermilion door was tightly shut. Everything looked so peaceful, but Han Yunqi knew that once Han Kongan's crime was announced tomorrow, this family would be in chaos and fail. The memories that belonged to this body kept appearing in her mind. They were all memories from when she was young. They were all memories of being bullied and humiliated. Although they were the memories of the original owner, they had long been part of this body. They were all her memories. Everything seemed so real, as if it had just happened yesterday. After a long time, a wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of Han Yunqi's mouth, and then she turned around and left. By the time she returned to the Duke of Qin's mansion, it was already the middle of the night. Han Yunqi wasn't even sure if she could knock on the door. Unexpectedly, from afar, she could see that the mansion was brightly lit, especially in the main hall. Seeing this, Han Yunqi muttered in her heart. Could it be that something big happened in the manor in the middle of the night? With Grand Concubine Yi's personality, she needed beauty sleep. Even if the sky collapsed, she might not stay up all night. Or did something happen in Long Fei Yi? Han Yunqi made all sorts of guesses. She couldn't help but wonder if they were waiting for her. Soon enough, she reached the door and discovered that the old servant guarding the door had been waiting for her. She knocked once before the door opened. "Esteemed Wang Fei, congratulations, congratulations. The Grand Imperial Concubine has been waiting for you for a long time. Hurry and go." The old servant was so excited that he couldn't stop smiling. Congratulations? Now Han Yunqi was thoroughly stunned. It really had something to do with her. Could the congratulations from Grand Concubine Yi's servant be a good thing? Han Yunqi was filled with suspicions, but she didn't ask any questions. She immediately headed for the main hall. But as soon as she arrived, she saw 3 large chests all open. One was gold, one was silver, and the last was jewelry. There were even a few bolts of high-quality silk on the side. Goodness gracious, Han Yunqi's eyes shone at the sight. Where did so many good things come from? The gold, silver, and jewels were too dazzling. No wonder Han Yunqi saw them first before she saw Grand Concubine Yi. Grand Concubine Yi was sitting in the main seat, her exquisite face so gloomy that it looked like water could drip from it. Murong Wanru was waiting by her side, her eyes filled with jealousy and hatred as soon as she saw Han Yunqi enter. "Mu Fei, you were looking for Chenxia?" Han Yunqi bowed in greeting. "He, the great meritorious subject has returned. Hurry and rise. How can I bear the greetings of a great meritorious subject?" Grand Concubine Yi's voice had turned sharp and unkind. She probably knew what had happened in the palace. Han Yunqi rose to her feet and glanced at the gold, silver, and jewels. She had an idea of what was going on. This should be Emperor Tianhui's reward. It was good, but why did he give it away so quickly? Han Yunqi stole a glance at Grand Concubine Yi, her mouth twitching. Her mother had saved the Empress Dowager, while she had saved her grandson. No wonder Grand Concubine Yi had flipped out. "Sister-in-law, I never expected your medical skills to be so good. You can even cure the Crown Prince's strange illness. His Majesty and the Empress Dowager must be very happy, right? Look, these are all for you. They sent them overnight," Murong Wanru said with a smile. Grand Concubine Yi was still angry, so mentioning the Emperor and Empress Dowager was like adding oil to the fire. If you make the Emperor and Empress Dowager happy, your days will be better, too." Grand Concubine Yi laughed coldly. What did Grand Concubine Yi count for? Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, she crawled out of bed just to be mean and unkind? She really had no tolerance. Han Yunqi really couldn't stand these overtones and sarcastic remarks. Grand Concubine Yi had already competed with her a few times. If she still didn't know her temper, then she didn't mind showing it off again. Mu Fei's words are very true. His Majesty and the Empress Dowager are both very happy. His Majesty said that if it weren't for the rumors in the capital, he wouldn't have known Chenxia had medical skills, Han Yunqi replied with a smile. At these words, Murong Wanru's face turned 3 shades paler. Grand Concubine Yi paled as well. She never thought Han Yunqi would dare to say such things. This little slut was getting bolder and bolder. Is that so? Grand Concubine Yi gritted her teeth. This is also your luck. With so many rewards, should I congratulate you? Of course. Chenxia's glory is Mu Fei's glory, as well as the Duke of Qin's estate. His Majesty and the Empress Dowager will definitely remember this favor, Han Yunqi added. Compared to Grand Concubine Yi's acrimony, her tongue was simply venomous. She'd specifically stabbed a knife into Grand Concubine Yi's most painful wound. To her, this was a disgrace, but Han Yunqi actually called it glory. More importantly, she still had to smile at Han Yunqi on the surface. Grand Concubine Yi was so angry that she gritted her teeth, unable to speak. She didn't even know why she'd waited until the middle of the night for Han Yunqi to come back. Was she waiting for her to show off, then come back with sarcastic remarks? Seeing Grand Concubine Yi's silence, Han Yunqi spoke again. Mu Fei, this time His Highness performed a great service as well. It was His Highness who risked his life to obtain the lifeblood pill. Without it, Chenxia wouldn't have been able to treat her. What? These words were so poisonous that Grand Concubine Yi's heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys all ached. Her most cherished son had risked his life to ask for medicine for her enemy's most cherished grandson. Ah! Grand Concubine Yi roared in her heart. Enough! Han Yunqi, you've had enough. Her hands had long clenched into fists within her sleeves, her fingernails digging into her palms. Even that hurt less than her heart. If I find out who spread those rumors, I won't let them off easily. Murong Wanru had a guilty conscience and finally restrained herself, not daring to add oil to the fire. Seeing Grand Concubine Yi's face contorted with anger, Han Yunqi was in a good mood. She almost forgot about her exhaustion. Humph, if she didn't flip out, would Grand Concubine Yi really think she was a sick cat? Mu Fei, treating the crown prince took a lot of effort. I'm tired too. If there's nothing else, Chunxia will take her leave first. His Majesty said to let Chunxia rest well. Han Yunqi's last words were meant for Grand Concubine Yi's ears. She wasn't stupid enough to use the Empress Dowager to pressure her, but the Emperor was different. If she said that, at least she could have a few days of peace and rest well. As she spoke, she prepared to leave, but Grand Concubine Yi ordered sternly, Han Yunqi, you stop right there. This voice was very, very fierce. Han Yunqi always felt that Grand Concubine Yi's voice was different from her usual ferocious self, but she couldn't tell what was different. She halted her steps, calm and collected. Does Mu Fei have any other orders? Han Yunqi, the Empress Dowager asked you to stay for dinner? Grand Concubine Yi asked coldly. Her tone wasn't as harsh as before, but more serious. Han Yunqi was surprised. If she knew about this, then it looked like Grand Concubine Yi had spies in the palace as well. Yes, Han Yunqi replied honestly. Why did the Empress Dowager ask you to stay? Grand Concubine Yi asked again. If she hadn't heard the news, she wouldn't have stayed up in the middle of the night to wait for Han Yunqi's return. Han Yunqi's eyes flashed with caution. Was Grand Concubine Yi suspecting something? This was a huge matter. If Grand Concubine Yi suspected something between her and the Empress Dowager, would she forgive her so easily? Han Yunqi's attitude didn't change, but her reply was cautious. The Empress Dowager has never asked anyone to stay for dinner in the palace. She said Chunxia was rewarded for treating the crown prince. Grand Concubine Yi's eyes flickered between light and darkness. The Empress Dowager had never asked anyone to stay for dinner in the palace. She might have asked this girl to stay for more than just a reward. Did she say something to this girl? Lady Tianxin had saved her, while this girl had saved her most precious grandson. What reason did she have to hate this girl? Moreover, this girl wasn't ugly anymore. She even had good medical skills. She was a useful talent. Thinking back, the Empress Dowager had betrothed her benefactor's woman to the Duke of Qin with ulterior motives, hadn't she? Thinking up to here, the shadows in Grand Concubine Yi's eyes grew even darker. She stared fixedly at Han Yunqi without a word. Han Yunqi assumed that she'd keep asking questions, but her heart grew flustered. Just what did Grand Concubine Yi mean? What did she want to do? Grand Concubine Yi stared at Han Yunqi for a long time before giving a cold, meaningful laugh. Then she flicked her sleeves and left. Her smile made Han Yunqi's hairs stand on end. She knew that her days wouldn't be peaceful in the end. Still, the battle-hardened Han Yunqi quickly adjusted her state of mind. Her gaze was calm and unperturbed. If Grand Concubine Yi wanted to investigate, then go ahead. She wasn't afraid. But before the investigation was over, it was best not to make trouble for her. Otherwise, she'd definitely fight back with all her might. As soon as Grand Concubine Yi left, the guilty Murong Wanru exhaled silently. She feared nothing more than Mu Fei investigating the person who'd spread the rumors. Fortunately, Han Yunqi's meal at the Empress Dowager's had diverted Mu Fei's attention. From what she understood of Mu Fei, she'd definitely brood over the matter for a long time to come. She'd definitely investigate to the end. Han Yunqi, even if she cured the crown prince's strange illness, so what if she had the emperor's support? The emperor had 1,000 affairs to attend to every day and couldn't care less. Murong Wanru walked over with a lovely smile and coaxed, "Sister-in-law, Mu Fei is happy for you. But it's hard not to lose her temper after waiting so long. Don't take it to heart." Chapter 72. How could that be? Little sister Wanru, take a look at these pieces of jewelry and pick a few that you like, Han Yunqi said generously. No, this is what His Majesty bestowed to sister-in-law, Murong Wanru quickly refused. It doesn't matter. There's so much that I can't use them all. Pick a few. Han Yunqi was very enthusiastic as she pulled Murong Wanru's hand over. Actually, Murong Wanru had long looked through the jewelry. Emperor Tianhui's gifts were all foreign tributes that couldn't be bought even if one had money. There were a few pieces that Murong Wanru liked very much. Seeing Han Yunqi so enthusiastic, she reluctantly picked them up, but Han Yunqi only said, "Me? I still want to find out who spread the news that I can treat illnesses and give some of these gifts to that person. In any case, she'll have some merit, won't she?" At these words, Murong Wanru's hand froze. "Little sister Wanru, who do you think spread the rumors? She doesn't want to harm me, but help me, right?" Han Yunqi asked seriously. No matter how well Murong Wanru pretended, her hands betrayed her. Han Yunqi was still holding her hand, but she withdrew it as if she'd been electrocuted. Han Yunqi saw this and smiled even more brilliantly. She pulled her hand down and said, "Little sister Wanru, hurry and pick. No need to be polite." Murong Wanru had a guilty conscience as she forced herself to calm down. She said politely, "No need, no need. His Majesty, you can't give away the gifts that His Majesty bestows. Sister-in-law, it's getting late. You should go rest early. I'll go accompany Mu Fei." As soon as she finished speaking, she didn't say anything else and fled in defeat. Han Yunqi watched her retreating form, a seed of hatred growing in her eyes. There weren't many people who knew so much inside information, and even fewer people who'd spread the rumors to benefit from it. Besides those in the palace, there was only this one in the estate. If it was the Empress who wanted her to treat the Crown Prince, she didn't need to go through so much trouble. Just a pillow talk would do. Therefore, Murong Wanru was the biggest suspect. It's her again. This time it's her again. White Lotus, this time your heart will be stifled. Next time, this princess will definitely pull out your foxtail. After angering Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru away, Han Yunqi had thoroughly vented her resentment. Looking at the large sum of rewards before her, her eyes curved into crescents. This feeling was like winning the lottery and becoming rich overnight. From now on, he wouldn't have to count money to live. She casually picked up an ingot of silver and threw it to the servant girl at the side. "Go find a few people to help me move these things to Hibiscus Courtyard." The maid caught the heavy silver in a panic. She was a little stunned. Did the princess consort really want to give her this much? After all, even Imperial Concubine Dowager might not be so generous. "Why aren't you going?" Han Yunqi frowned and asked. "Go. This servant will go right away." "Esteemed Wang Fei, please wait a moment." The servant girl was overjoyed and ran out with the silver. Very soon, the servant girl brought back 6 or 7 able-bodied men. These people usually looked at Han Yunqi with their eyes growing on top of their heads, but now they were all reverent and respectful. Esteemed Wang Fei this and that, they were all lackeys. Money could make the devil turn millstones. This was the absolute truth. The items were carefully delivered to the leisurely cloud pavilion in the Hibiscus Courtyard. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi was very generous and gave them an ingot of gold to divide among them. The servants had never seen gold more than a few times in their lives, so they couldn't believe it. They treated Han Yunqi with the respect of an old ancestor and thanked her multiple times before leaving. "Mistress, that's gold. Ah, it's enough for months of their wages." Little Chun Xiang huffed. "Little Chun Xiang, do you know the principles of poisoning?" Han Yunqi asked seriously. Little Chun Xiang shook her head. Han Yunqi smiled and said, "The poison has to be thorough. That kind of poison is the most difficult to detoxify once it reaches the internal organs. This is also the principle of buying people's hearts." Little Chun Xiang still shook her head, not understanding. Han Yunqi was helpless. "Do you think Murong Wanru can be so generous?" "Even if she's so generous, she's not as rich as Mistress." Little Chun Xiang pouted. In her eyes, Mistress was a rich woman. "That's the principle. So, from now on, this group of people will only side with me and not her." Han Yunqi smiled. People disperse when wealth is gathered. People gather when wealth is scattered. Han Yunqi thought that the news of her ingot of gold would soon spread among the servants of the Duke of Qin's manor. Let's see who would dare to be disrespectful to her. The skies were already dimly lit, but Han Yunqi didn't feel sleepy. Together with little Chen Xiang, she counted the silver and collected them at the same time. As the saying went, counting money until one's hands cramped up. When the sky was bright, they finally finished packing. Little Chen Xiang was exhausted and was about to go to the kitchens to make breakfast. Who knew that as soon as they left Hibiscus Garden, there would be servants holding a steaming hot breakfast waiting for them. In fact, little Chen Xiang didn't really understand the principles of mistress, but when she saw the scene at the courtyard door, she instantly understood. It was great to have money. Han Yunqi ate something. Perhaps because she was too tired, she didn't have much appetite or sleepiness. It was just that she didn't have any energy. She pondered for a moment and let little Chen Xiang go to the bedchamber to take a look. Mistress, His Highness Duke of Qin hasn't returned. Little Chen Xiang quickly came to report. Han Yunqi was immediately happy. She packed her things and prepared to go to the hot spring. Being so tired in the middle of winter, the best way was to soak in the hot spring. After she confirmed that there was really no one in the room, she let little Chen Xiang stand guard outside the door and went to the hot spring. Although Long Fei's pool was an indoor one, it was a natural one. The water was very soft, the temperature just right, and the depth was just right. As soon as Han Yunqi soaked herself in, her entire body and mind relaxed. She leaned against the side of the pool and raised her head, allowing the hot spring to wash her body. She enjoyed this leisurely moment. Soon, Han Yunqi drowsily fell asleep. A figure landed on the right wall of the bedchamber. The master had returned. Long Fei was just about to walk over when he saw little Chen Xiang sitting at the door in a daze. A trace of suspicion flashed through his eyes, but after thinking about it, he seemed to have thought of something. Immediately, he silently leaped onto the roof. This servant girl was at the door. Could it be that Han Yunqi was in the room? What was this woman doing in his territory? Long Fei's eyes flickered between light and darkness as he carefully pried open a tile. Unexpectedly, what greeted his eyes was a painting of a beautiful woman bathing in color and fragrance. Long Fei's icy gaze froze before he averted his eyes. But after a moment, he looked again and saw a mess of clothes by the side of the pool. The woman's fragrant shoulders were bare, her collarbones and jade-like neck faintly discernible in the steam, endlessly alluring. This woman, what gall! She actually ran to his place to soak in the hot spring. Long Fei's icy eyes grew even gloomier. It was obvious that he was very unhappy, but as time passed, he didn't look away. His gaze was cold and arrogant, as if he was admiring a work of art. Although he was clearly peeping, it didn't seem vulgar at all. Instead, it gave people the feeling that it was only natural. All right now, his handsome face and expression were a work of art that made people unable to take their eyes off him. Abruptly, a gust of wind blew in. Long Fei looked up and saw Chu Shifeng approaching. His eyes flashed with displeasure before he waved a hand to indicate for Chu Shifeng to stay away. Then he put the tile back in its place and personally went to the rear courtyard to meet the man. Master, you? Chu Shifeng was full of doubts. What was his master doing just then? Long Fei didn't reply. How are things going? To reply, master, it's very likely that the leader of the Northernly spies is hiding in the capital. He's an expert in poisons. This subordinate interrogated a few survivors and found that their testimonies were the same. Their poisons all came from the same person, but they don't know who that person is, Chu Shifeng replied. Northernly had planted a group of spies in Tianning who were experts in poisons. Their goal was to poison Tianning's capable generals. If Han Yunqi hadn't discovered the hidden poison in the young general's body, Long Fei wouldn't have found this clue so quickly. He'd been busy these past few days working on this matter. Track down the source of the poison. Don't alarm the young general yet. Long Fei instructed. The poison in the young general's body was a slow-acting one that had been in place for at least a few years. It had to be someone by his side. If the young general's poisoning had something to do with the spies, then it meant that they'd been hiding in Tianning for years and had hidden themselves very deeply. Yes, Chu Shifeng respectfully obeyed. By the time Long Fei returned to the roof of his sleeping quarters, Han Yunqi had already emerged. This smart, stupid woman knew nothing of the situation. She was like a lotus flower in clear water, elegant and refined. Her pink face was filled with a satisfied smile as she chatted and laughed with little Chen Xiang as they walked back to leisurely Cloud Pavilion. Idiot! When will she be on guard? Long Fei Yi muttered to himself, extremely dissatisfied. Actually, Han Yunqi couldn't be blamed. She didn't know any martial arts, so how could she sense the movements around her so easily? Moreover, because of her profession, she had a strong ability to repel disturbances when she did things. She could basically ignore everything around her. After resting enough, Han Yunqi decided to take little Chen Xiang out for a stroll. First, she'd have silver to buy some things she'd wanted for a long time. Second, she wanted to take a look at the Han family's situation. It was already so late, so Han Kongan should have been convicted by now. The announcement should have been made by now. Emperor Tianhui wouldn't hide the truth, but deal with Han Kongan with great fanfare. This would tell the world that the Crown Prince's health was in good condition. But Han Yunqi never expected things to get so big. As soon as she reached the streets, she heard discussions everywhere. Notices were plastered all over the streets as well. Emperor Tianhui had charged Han Kongan with the crime of deceiving the monarch and plotting to murder the Crown Prince. Although he didn't explicitly state that Han Yunqi had saved the Crown Prince, the news had long spread through the upper circles. Han Yunqi sat in a private room as she listened to the discussions outside. The Han family's in chaos this morning. I heard that a few of the concubines got tired and ran away. Only Han Kongan was punished for such a serious crime. I think there's something fishy going on here. Qin Wangfei is the Han family's daughter of the first wife. I think it was Qin Wangfei who stepped forward to protect the Han family, right? I heard they'll be paraded through the streets in 3 days. Han Kongan was a famous doctor, but why do you think he wanted to murder the Crown Prince? There's no reason. It's hard to explain the imperial family's affairs clearly, really hard to explain. Han Yunqi listened calmly. She didn't care about any of this. She thought that since they'll be paraded through the streets in 3 days, she should visit her father in prison and ask about her mother's difficult labor. Han Yunqi had asked around before, but she hadn't heard anything about her mother's fetal position being out of place or any other illness. How could she have a difficult labor? Mother was a doctor herself, so she should know her own body best. Han Yunqi couldn't help but feel that there was something fishy going on here. The one who should know the truth the best was her husband, Han Kongan. Most importantly, where did the poison scar on her face come from? If she was born with it, then it was obvious that someone wanted to kill her while she was still in her mother's womb. This matter needed to be investigated thoroughly. In the afternoon, Han Yunqi had little Chen Xiang bring back the things she bought while she went to the prisons. Chapter 73. Han Kongan was a prisoner on death row and couldn't be visited. However, Han Yunqi's identity was special, and she was the Crown Prince's savior. Although this matter wasn't made public, the Supreme Court's chancellor still knew about it. He had already instructed that they must let Han Yunqi in. The jailers who lynched her last time were all scared and hid, afraid of being recognized. The jailer who led the way reported in a low voice, "Esteemed Wang Fei, Han Kongan has been shouting since last night. He said he wants to see you. You can leave first. I'll call you if there's anything." Han Yunqi said indifferently. It wasn't strange that Han Kongan wanted to see her. It was nothing more than asking her to save his life. Han Yunqi couldn't understand this kind of person. He clearly knew that they were enemies, so why ask for it? Couldn't he have some backbone if he didn't get what he asked for? When Han Kongan saw Han Yunqi coming over, he pounced over in surprise. Fortunately, there were iron bars blocking him. In just 1 night and half a day, Han Kongan was already unrecognizable. His hair was disheveled, and his prison clothes were disheveled. It was obvious that he had been tortured. How could someone who entered the imperial prison not be tortured? Han Yunqi had experienced it herself. "Daughter, you're finally here. Father knew that you would come. Daddy knows that you won't abandon Daddy." Han Kongan's voice was choked in his throat. His eyes were sunken and red, making him look like a pitiful old man. Those who didn't know would think that Han Yunqi, this unfilial daughter, had abandoned him. Cold, Han Yunqi looked at him. She leaned against the wall and sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Han Kangen's eyes turned red again. He hugged the iron bars and slowly slid down to sit down. Daughter, you're the only one who can save your father now. Daddy is counting on you. Say something, won't you? Han Kangen's eyes were filled with deep hope. His voice was old and sorrowful, but Han Yunshi was indifferent. She coldly examined him. When Han Kangen saw her cold eyes, he slightly stiffened and suddenly fell silent. He looked at her deeply with sorrowful eyes, looking extremely miserable. Han Kangen, you've finally remembered that I'm your daughter. Han Yunshi finally spoke up, her face full of ridicule. In his memory, when had this father ever called him daughter? Han Yunshi pursed his lips and touched his old face. He shook his head repeatedly and muttered to himself as if he was very regretful. However, Han Yunshi didn't hear what he said clearly. Soon, Han Kangen raised his head again. He hugged the iron bars and said emotionally, Daughter, Daddy knows his mistake. Daddy is already so old. Can you forgive Daddy? Take it as father begging you. Why? Han Yunshi said coldly. It was ridiculous for the child to ask for forgiveness after he had grown up. Yunshi, for better or worse, I'm still your father. Are you willing to watch as your father is paraded through the streets? Father can't afford to lose face like this. Only you can save Daddy now. Just take it as Daddy begging you, begging you, begging you. For the sake of your dead mother, save Daddy this one time. It would have been better if Han Kangen hadn't said these words, because once he did, Han Yunshi's temper flared up. She impatiently cut him off. Divine Dr. Han, you think too highly of me. You've already been sentenced to death. I don't have that much face on my own. No, you've saved His Highness the Crown Prince's life, so the Emperor will definitely listen to you. Daughter, you've even saved the Han clan's 3 generations. Save Daddy, too. His Majesty will definitely listen to you. You're a meritorious official now. Why don't you go beg the Duke of Qin? His Majesty will listen to his words. Han Kangen seemed to be grasping at his last life-saving straw as he spoke and begged with all his might. Yunshi, as long as you save Daddy, Daddy will agree to anything. But the more he acted like this, the more Han Yunshi loathed him. You'll agree to anything, right? She asked with a cold smile. Han Kangen hastily nodded, looking extremely pitiful. Very good. Then tell me, how did my mother die? Han Yunshi coldly asked. This was the sole purpose of her trip here. Who knew that Han Kangen's pleas would come to an abrupt end at these words? Han Yunshi didn't miss the complicated look in his eyes as she asked, My mother died from dystocia. Are there any witnesses? Were there any attempts to save her? Han Yunshi's blunt and incisive question made Han Kangen's cloudy and sorrowful eyes clear up in an instant. He thought that Han Yunshi and his mother would definitely be soft-hearted and easy to talk things over. As long as he begged properly, this girl would still be soft-hearted and save him. But he never expected that she'd come for this matter. Seeing the change in Han Kangen's expression, Han Yunshi's lips rose into a cold smile. She knew that her suspicions were correct. What, are you surprised that I would ask this? Han Yunshi's voice contained suppressed anger. She thought that if the truth was as she guessed, that Han Kangen was jealous of her mother's medical talent and didn't save her, causing her mother's death, then before this man died, she would definitely make him suffer a fate worse than death. However, the situation was completely out of Han Yunshi's expectations. Han Kangen looked at Han Yunshi and suddenly laughed. I didn't expect that I, Han Kangen, would have such a day. Han Yunshi frowned as she looked at him. She couldn't understand why the man who was begging her just a moment ago would laugh so bleakly at this moment. Facing her questioning, shouldn't he have a guilty conscience and be afraid? Could it be that the truth wasn't what she thought? Are you going to speak or not? Han Yunshi didn't have that much patience. Han Yunshi, are you sure you won't save father? Han Kangen suddenly became serious, his tone revealing a hint of threat. This time, Han Yunshi realized that this old thing had been acting all along, acting pitiful to gain sympathy. Han Yunshi immediately stood up and warned him coldly, Don't even think about it. You can choose not to speak, but let me tell you, I have ways to make you speak. If I tell you and you save my life, I'll tell you the truth. Are you willing? Han Kangen also stood up. He changed his old and flustered look and became calm and full of confidence. You already have no right to talk terms with me, Han Yunqi said angrily. Yes, you will definitely be very interested in the truth that I know. That's the agreement between Madame Tianxin and I. Han Kongan deliberately lowered his voice and was full of mystery. Once he said this, Han Yunqi was shocked. Han Kongan actually called her mother Madame Tianxin. No matter how she listened to his tone, it didn't seem like he was talking about his wife. Looking at Han Yunqi's expression, a hint of jealousy flashed across Han Kongan's eyes. Why was Han Yunqi so smart, and the bunch of useless people in the Han family so stupid? Why didn't he have a daughter like her? What exactly is going on? Han Yunqi became more and more uneasy. However, Han Kongan was calm and composed. As long as you promise to save my life, I'll definitely tell you. If you don't tell me, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. Han Yunqi's eyes narrowed into a straight line. Her whole body was filled with a dangerous aura. However, the bargaining chips in Han Kongan's hands were too heavy. He wasn't afraid. Besides, he was the head of the family. How many big scenes had he not seen, and how many things had he not experienced? How could he compromise so easily? Come at me. After all, Old Man is also a person who is about to die. It'll only be 3 days before he suffers a fate worse than death. Han Kongan laughed coldly. You. Han Yunqi stepped forward and closed in. Han Kongan didn't retreat. His expression was calm. If you don't believe me, you can try. This old thing. Han Yunqi drew back, her hands clenched into fists in her sleeves. Fine, I promise you. Just you wait. So speaking, she didn't even spare Han Kongan a glance before turning to leave. For the sake of finding out the truth, she could only agree to Han Kongan's request. She didn't dare to take the risk. If Han Kongan didn't tell her, then she'd never know the truth. However, she only promised to save his life, not to get him out of the prison cell. As soon as she left the prison, Han Yunqi went straight to the palace. She didn't see Emperor Tianhui, but the crown prince. Last time, Emperor Tianhui had already been extremely unwilling to yield. If she begged him again, she might not get anything. Instead, it'd only make him feel disgusted. As for Long Feiyi, Han Yunqi didn't even dare to think about it. She could only go find the crown prince. She used the excuse of examining his wounds to see him. There was no need to report her arrival, but a eunuch respectfully led her all the way to the eastern palace. Gu Beiwa had just left, so the two of them didn't bump into each other. Long Tianma was surprised to see Han Yunqi here. That day, Han Yunqi had given Gu Beiwa the job of changing the bandages with detailed instructions. Long Tianma thought she wouldn't come. Long Tianma had disdained Han Yunqi's ugly features in the past. Even though Imperial Grandmother had decreed the marriage, he still felt that marrying Han Yunqi was too much of an injustice for Imperial Uncle Qin. But now he felt gratitude and admiration for her from the bottom of his heart. Unlike the Empress Dowager and Empress, he didn't have any grudges with Grand Concubine Yi and Han Yunqi. Although he knew his imperial father was on guard against the Duke of Qin, he also knew that his father hoped he'd gain the man's support. Thus, he was more than happy to get on good terms with Qin Wangfei. Imperial Aunt, I've troubled you to come personally. It's been hard on you. Long Tianma was very polite. Although they were about the same age, there was still respect between them. Han Yunqi didn't examine his wounds, but only his pulse. You've recovered well. It looks like you'll be able to get off the bed in 2 or 3 days. This is all thanks to Imperial Aunt's formidable skills. Long Tianma was very polite. Although Han Yunqi didn't know whether Long Tianma's heart was black or white, his manners on the surface were much better than Princess Chomping's. Such self-cultivation was worthy of being the heir apparent. After a round of pleasantries, Han Yunqi probed, Crown Prince, you've finally recovered from your illness. Does His Majesty plan to grant amnesty to the world? Long Tianma was a smart man. As soon as he heard Han Yunqi's words, a complicated look flitted past his eyes. After some hesitation, he replied, I've never heard Imperial Father mention it. Then does Crown Prince have such a plan? Han Yunqi probed again. At this point, Long Tianma was basically certain that Han Yunqi had come to ask for a favor. He smiled and said straightforwardly, Could it be that Imperial Aunt has someone you want to pardon? Not expecting Long Tianma to be so direct, Han Yunqi felt embarrassed. She also smiled. Crown Prince is truly a smart man. Imperial Aunt praises me too much. If there's anything, there's no harm in Imperial Aunt saying it directly, Long Tianma said seriously. My father, Han Kongan, has been sentenced to death. 3 days later, he will be paraded through the streets and beheaded at noon. Han Yunqi said, then sighed softly. Although he deserved to die, no matter what, he's still my father. As his daughter, I can't just watch him die. A lifetime of imprisonment is better than death. Han Yunqi purposely emphasized the last part. At this point, Long Tianma immediately understood what she meant. Actually, even if Han Yunqi didn't say it, he could guess that Han Yunqi wanted to grant amnesty to the world because she wanted to save her father. However, as long as she asked Imperial Uncle Qin, and Imperial Uncle Qin suggested it to Imperial Father would definitely agree. He didn't expect that she didn't go to Imperial Uncle Qin, but came to him instead. This was interesting. Chapter 74. Looking at Han Yunqi, Long Tianma didn't quite understand, but he wouldn't refuse to help. Although Imperial Father had bestowed rewards upon him, he owed Han Yunqi a debt of gratitude for saving his life. He was planning to find a chance to repay her as well. Moreover, a general amnesty was an excellent reason to win over the hearts of the people. After so many years of seclusion, he'd have to make his first move. Long Tianma nodded and said, this crown prince's illness has been cured. Granting amnesty is a good idea. Imperial Aunt, you can go back first. When Imperial Father comes later, I will report this matter. Although she knew that Long Tianma would agree, she didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Han Yunqi was overjoyed and looked at this crown prince in a new light. Before leaving, Long Tianma called out to her, Imperial Aunt, when you see Imperial Uncle, please send my regards. Tell him that after I recover, I will go and see him. Han Yunqi nodded. From what she knew, Long Fei Yi and the other princes, including the crown prince, weren't very close. Long Tianma's actions were obviously to curry favor with Long Fei Yi. However, although his illness had been cured, Long Fei Yi didn't come to see him. It was really disappointing. Of course, Han Yunqi couldn't care so much. Her heart was filled with Han Kongan's matter. Han Yunqi didn't go out after returning to the Duke of Qin's residence. She kept waiting for news and occasionally let Qin Xiang go out to ask around. Unexpectedly, it was already the afternoon of the second day, and the notices on the streets were still there. The streets were still full of discussions. It was said that several branches of the Han family had gone to visit Han Kongan in prison, but they couldn't see him. When they came back, they fought over the family property. Although Long Tianma's appearance had a high chance of success, Han Yunqi was still nervous when she didn't get a definite answer. After all, time was tight. At night, Han Yunqi stood by the window and looked at the capital's night sky with a frown. Tomorrow was the last day. What was the situation with Long Tianma? What was the truth behind Madame Tianxin's difficult labor? What secrets were there between Lady Tianxin and Han Kongan? That night, he tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. However, good news came the next morning. Qin Xiang knocked on the door while shouting, Mistress, Mistress, His Majesty has issued a general amnesty early in the morning. Except for the crime of rebellion, all capital crimes have been changed to permanent imprisonment. He said that the Crown Prince personally requested for this. Han Yunqi almost jumped out of bed. After washing up and getting dressed, she didn't even have time to eat and immediately ran to the prison. The universal amnesty order had just been issued, and the news spread the fastest in the imperial prison. Han Kongan heard a lot of discussions from afar, and even saw a few prisoners on death row being escorted out of their cells. I heard that it was the Crown Prince who proposed a general amnesty. Hee, this time, we can be considered to have the Crown Prince's blessing. That's right, we'll be able to get out soon, right? Look, those death row prisoners have been taken away. They're probably going to let them go. Hee, it will be our turn soon. The sounds of discussion filled the entire prison cell. Han Kongan leaned against the metal door to listen, his cloudy eyes brightening. He sighed in admiration in his heart. Why didn't he realize that Han Yunqi was so smart? She didn't beg Emperor Tianhui, but the crown prince instead. She actually came up with the idea of a general amnesty. Was this really the same Han Yunqi from before? He always felt that this daughter couldn't compare to her mother, but now his opinion was shaken. Very soon, Han Yunqi arrived. Han Konggen's gaze on her changed slightly. Daughter, you're really smart. Looks like you know about His Majesty's general amnesty. Han Yunqi was in a bad mood. You should take your father out of the death row prison by now, right? Han Konggen's mental state was clearly much better. Although he was in a sorry state, he stood ramrod straight and had quite the bearing. Han Yunqi's eyes flashed with ridicule before she asked coldly, "Then when are you planning to tell me the truth? At the very least, let your father leave this place first." Han Konggen was very firm. Most doctors were misophobic, so he hated the rotting stench of death in this death row prison cell. Han Yunqi's mocking smile widened. If Han Konggen thought he could reach for a yard after getting an inch, then he was gravely mistaken. She narrowed her eyes and warned coldly, "Han Konggen, you can't die now. Do you believe that I can make you live a life worse than death every single day?" Now that Han Konggen had been spared from death, he was no longer a barefooted man. How could he not fear Han Yunqi's threat? Seeing Han Yunqi's dangerous expression, Han Konggen was a little unhappy, but he stopped while he was ahead. He pointed at the foot of the wall, indicating that Han Yunqi should sit down and talk. Han Yunqi did the same as last time and leaned against the wall, her eyes cold as she stared straight at Han Konggen. Seeing that she was on guard, Han Konggen sat down and sighed. "Don't worry, I won't lie to you at a time like this. Cut the crap. Answer my question. How did my mother die?" Han Yunqi said coldly. Han Konggen did not answer her question, but the words he said almost made Han Yunqi's heart stop beating. It was too unexpected. He said, "Han Yunqi, I can tell you very clearly that I, Han Konggen, am not your biological father." "What?" Han Yunqi could not believe her ears. She was extremely shocked and her eyes unconsciously widened. Seeing Han Yunqi's shock, Han Konggen's eyes unconsciously revealed a hint of sadness. Everyone knew that he had never fulfilled his duty as a father to this daughter, but no one knew how much he wished that this daughter was his own flesh and blood deep in his heart. It was not only because Han Yunqi had made a fortune that he wished so. Back when Han Yunqi was still in her mother's womb, he had been hoping so. Unfortunately, he wasn't worthy of that woman. Han Yunqi recovered from her shock and suddenly grew angry. "Han Konggen, you're lying." Lady Tianqin was a legend. She was brimming with talent and a benevolent doctor. How could she be a fickle woman? How could she have an illegitimate daughter? Moreover, Han Yunqi would never believe that a man like Han Konggen could tolerate an extramarital affair and raise someone else's child. "I'm not lying to you. I have proof." Han Konggen was very calm. Leaving aside Han Yunqi, even anyone in Tianning's capital who had heard of Lady Tianqin's deeds wouldn't believe this. Still, this was absolutely true. Otherwise, Han Yunqi was still the Han family's daughter of the first wife and the Duke of Qin's fiancée. Why wouldn't he treat a small poison scar on her face? "What proof?" Han Yunqi asked anxiously. "Promise me one thing and I'll tell you everything." Han Konggen was very serious. It wasn't a threat, but a kind of determination. But the agitated Han Yunqi ignored the determination in his eyes and shot to her feet. "Don't even think about it. I've already saved your life. What other chips do you have to talk terms with me?" No matter what, Han Yunqi refused to believe that Lady Tianqin would cheat. If she really was an illegitimate daughter, then it had to be Han Konggen who'd let Lady Tianqin down. Han Yunqi was already furious at this point. Han Konggen's conditions had no doubt infuriated her. But in the face of such a furious Han Yunqi, Han Konggen was very calm. "Han Yunqi, listen to me first before you answer me. It won't be too late." As he spoke, he took out a bunch of keys from his sleeves and passed them through the metal bars to Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi was slightly shocked. She recognized this key. It was the storehouse key. It was the symbol of the head of the family. In the storehouse, not only did it store the Han family's assets, it also stored two important things. One was the Han family's precious medicinal herbs, and the other was the Han family medical codex. Every medical family would have their own medical codex that recorded secret prescriptions and secret books. It was passed down from generation to generation and only passed down to the heir of the family head. The Han family medical codex was the family treasure of the Han family. Obtaining these things was equivalent to obtaining the entire Han family. Although the Han family's reputation had been ruined because of Han Kongen's imprisonment, the foundation of the Han family was still there. Not to mention other things, just the medical skills recorded in the Han family medical codex was enough to create a new generation of famous doctors. Looking at the key in front of her, Han Yunxi didn't move. Was Han Kongen planning to give the storehouse key to her? That wasn't possible. Not to mention that she wasn't of the Han family's bloodline. Even if she was already a married daughter. She didn't have the right to inherit the position of the head of the Han family. What kind of condition was Han Kongen offering? Han Yunxi took a step back and distanced herself from the key. Coldly, she asked, "What do you mean? Promise me that you'll do your best to support the new head of the family and revive the Han family. Everything will be for the sake of the Han family," Han Kongen said word by word. His bloodshot eyes shone with a determined light. Revive the Han family? Han Yunxi was very surprised. She originally thought that Han Kongen would threaten her to get him out of prison. She didn't expect him to propose such a condition. Not for himself, but for the Han family. Han Yunxi had always been filled with disappointment and disdain for this father. In her impression, this old thing was a selfish person. However, at this moment, she saw that he was righteous. However, Han Yunxi didn't understand. Why did he want her to do her best to realize his righteousness and put the Han family first? Had the Han family done anything for her? Had they given her anything? That was just a place that carried her painful memories. What right did he have to ask her to risk and sacrifice herself for the Han family? Moreover, according to what Han Kongen said, she and the Han family didn't even have any blood relations. Seeing the determination in Han Kongen's eyes, Han Yunxi's lips curled into a mocking smile. "You seem to be very confident that I will agree to your request? Because other than me, no one else in this world knows about your mother, including your biological father." Han Kongen's tone was firm. "I've already said that even your life is mine. You don't have any bargaining chips to negotiate with me," Han Yunxi said coldly. However, Han Kongen laughed. "If the Han family is defeated by the old man, what use does the old man have for his life? The old man can only kill himself to repay his ancestors." Han Yunxi didn't take it to heart. In her opinion, Han Kongen didn't have the courage to kill himself. However, who knew that after Han Kongen said that, he actually turned around and slammed into the wall at the side. Seeing this, Han Yunxi was immediately shocked. No. If Han Kongen really died, all her efforts over the past few days would be in vain. Where would she go to find the truth? However, Han Yunxi's no didn't stop Han Kongen. He was serious. His head was already bleeding from the impact, but he still wanted to continue slamming into the wall. Han Yunxi was shocked. It seemed that she had misjudged this old thing. The mission of the family was deeply ingrained in his heart. "Okay, I promise you," Han Yunxi said loudly. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.